Todd over
And the library. So that's the exclusion.
Well, welcome everyone. I think we'll get started since we have Chair Hymas here and we've got Member Booth online. And I know Member Baucus is on her way. And we will. Sorry about that. We will excuse Vice Chair Kelly because his son is getting married today. So congratulations to him and his family. And if you're gonna miss a committee meeting for something, that's an exciting reason to miss, I'd say. My name is Cindy Davis and I'll be chairing this committee today. And we're so glad all of you are here. Thank you. And we're all feeling refreshed because I don't know that we've started at 9:30. This is a late start time. How did we get that lucky after a late night last night?
Still late.
We're still-
I see what you're getting at.
Yes, but we're gonna be efficient. So we're gonna be rocking and rolling now. Okay, well, let's go ahead and just remind everyone that because of the way this room is set up and the way the microphones are in the ceiling, if an individual is talking, if there are sidebar conversations, all of it gets picked up for the recording. So just kind of be aware of that. And then we'll go ahead and start off with, I think we'll do our staff introductions first, and then we'll have our board member introductions. So let's go ahead and hear from Kira Bennett and then Marcus Chen.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kira Bennett. I am on Paula's team for the School Children's Trust here, and I am the compliance specialist.
Right, she has to tell us something that we don't know
Yes.
about her. Tell us what's up.
I guess education, I'm sure as all of us, has played a huge role in my life. So I'm a first generation college student. I have a bachelor's, a master's. I'm working on a second bachelor's, and to my husband's ultimate dismay, I'm not stopping there. And so I'm really, really grateful for all the educators in my life that allowed me those opportunities.
Great, thanks, Kira.
I'm Marcus. Marcus Chen, I'm a training specialist with School Children's Trust. I come from about 9 years of public ed experience. Originally a science teacher in Canton School District. Actually interviewed with Superintendent Hart a long time ago. And yeah, enjoyed my time at USP, so thanks.
Wonderful. Thanks, Marcus. Hello, Member Baucus. It's so great to see you.
Good morning. You don't have to move that, I'll take care of it. I know you're busy.
I forgot this was actually yours. You've been here yesterday. Great, well, it's so nice to have you here. Thanks for introducing yourselves. And we'll go ahead and do some board member introductions. Again, I said my name is Cindy Davis and I'll be chairing this session today. And we'll go to Chair Hymas.
Yeah, Hymas, represent Willard County, which is part of West Valley, and it's part of Utah County. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll go to Member Booth online. Give you a minute to catch your breath. Member Booth, can you hear us?
Hello.
No, I asked, did I?
No.
We're losing your sound. Member Booth.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
I think we should be.
This is Randy Booth. I am representing District 13. And that is Nebo School District and Provo City School District. And I'm delighted to be here in finance this morning.
Thank you, Member Baucus.
My name is Christina Bagas. I serve Taylorsville, Kearns, and West Jordan in the Greater Salt Lake Valley.
So great to see you. Thanks for being here. All right, let's go ahead and get started with a public comment. I'm not showing any requests as of yesterday afternoon. Amy is here.
She's online.
Cami, did you receive any other requests?
I did not, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to 3.2, R277-445, classifying small schools as necessarily existent. And let's turn the time over to Elise Newey and Dale Frost.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chair. I'm excited to be in finance. 445 is the rule that governs the necessarily existent small schools funding formula. This is the NEST formula. In the last legislative session, there was a bill run by Representative Peterson, HB 396, the small school district scale of operations formula that required us to make some significant changes to the formula. Luckily, a lot of those changes streamline it and make it much simpler. So we are excited to bring those changes to you today. If you look at the draft, we're going to be working off. There is a draft 1, which I apologize. We added a draft 2 last night, and I'll explain that in a second. So if you have your computer with you, look at draft 2. The changes that you will see there first, we gave it an oversight category because that hadn't been done yet. So this is a category 4 just because we have total control over the program and the funding mechanism. You'll see most of the definitions are also stricken and deleted because those are no longer considered in the formula. All of subsection 3 is also deleted because, again, we are streamlining the process and hopefully that will make it easier. The new subsection 3 outlines the formula. We did not, for your benefit, include the actual formula there. It's very complex, and Nestor loves to share it. If you would like to see the actual formula, I'm sure you can get a copy. Instead, what we decided to do was to put a table as an incorporated document so that every LEA can go in and check their total K-12 ADM against the scale of operations weighting they're receiving. So that is also in the backup, and you can see that. So every school can then go in, check their total K-12 ADM, and see exactly what they're receiving. The other thing that we were required to do by legislation was outline a process for a school that qualifies as a NEST school to split. There was concern, I think, that that would be done and that would cause issues with the NEST formula. And so we outlined a process by which the superintendent would receive a waiver request from a school that would then be brought to the board. The board would then either approve or not or follow up. Then that goes actually to the legislature to look at that. And so we're requesting that that be presented July previous to the school year. So that's a full year, calendar year before the start of the school year in which that split would occur. That gives us enough time for you all to review it and the legislature to review it and the school to get everything in order. So those are all the changes that you'll see at the very, very bottom. It just includes another section, subsection 5, that incorporates that chart by reference.
Chair,
Yes.
the changes from draft 1 to 2 are just is that right?
Yeah, the blue. So that's the oversight category and then the incorporation by reference.
And you were saying the incorporation by reference will be by the full board.
Yes.
In August.
So because we made this change after the backup deadline, we did not have an item on the agenda for the incorporated document. And so unfortunately, the committee can't formally vote on the incorporated document today. However, you can review it. It's in backup for you to see, and you can, we will make an item for the full board meeting and the full board can vote on it at that time. Should be fine. So there's that on the screen. This is the table that we'd be.
Sure, can I add to that
Please
just
do.
a little bit? Just a little bit of context. Elise came to me last night and was talking about some of the, are they procedural issues? Are they formatted? What are the reasons? There were some role reasons that just incorporating the summarized tables would be problematic. And so if we had to incorporate something by reference, it gave us the opportunity to then, have a much more, the weightings are the same. If you look at draft one, any of those ADM, you compare them, this just shows every ADM scenario from 0 to 7,700, what their scale of operations weighting will be. May I add a little?
A lot.
It is.
I mean, that's a lot.
It is, and but if we're going to be referencing something, it just gave us that opportunity to have a more robust table, and then it just makes it very clear, kind of what their weighting will be across all places. We don't have to show any examples. There were questions when we were drafting this new rule: are these steps in this table? Like if you are at 75 students, do you have a different weighting? No, it's a continuous curve. And may I provide just a little more context?
Yes,
on that?
please.
Sure, thanks. I should introduce myself. Sorry, Dale Frost, Minimum School Program Administrator. So at a very high level, the purpose of the old rule was to provide a lot of procedures to identify schools for the NEST program. One of the main reasons why House Bill 396 was passed was that the legislature wanted clear guidance, to provide clear guidance on which schools qualify as NEST. That's now in statute, so we don't need all these procedures to identify NEST schools. That's all. And so, and then there are two actual formulas. One is school-based, one is district-based now. The school-based formula is actually simpler, and that's in statute. The district-based formula was based on the 2020 funding study done by WestEd, and they were looking at what the differential costs for districts along the different size continuum, comparing to the largest district, Alpine. So basically, if you're a Daggett, your cost to provide reasonably equal, educational opportunities is 3 times as high as Daggett, because just the lack of economies of scale. So the statute, the new statute requires the board to adopt that's based on a cost function analysis, and so that's the main purpose of the new rule. I just realized something that we may want to consider. The actual title, the purpose of the old rule was really how do you classify schools as necessarily existent. The new rule is more about the district scale of operations. So maybe the title should be clarified on that, because the House Bill 396 also changed the name of the program to incorporate both the district and the school base.
So since we're not voting on that document today, is that something that just can be done before the next time?
You could make a motion to change the title today, since
clarity.
that's the rule, and then we would update the incorporated document when we bring it to the full board as well.
Okay.
That's why the new rule can be a lot simpler, because a lot more now is delineated clearly in statute, and I can go through all the reasons why the House Bill 396. You've been part of that process. We've talked about that.
It's a long time in coming.
It is many years in coming. I had no idea when in 2019 I accepted or volunteered to run the first or one of the first NEST task forces, what I was getting myself into.
I'm sure.
And many years later, we're here. I can tell you stories if you really want to know. They're fun. That's the extent of the changes to the rule.
All right. Well, thank you. Members, I'd entertain a motion to change that title.
I'd entertain a title. What is it? Well, what am I calling it? What are we, I know you mentioned it. What are we wanting to change the title to? We're changing it from classifying. So we're changing the title of is that right?
Just the rule. And then the manual will be,
Is the total fiscal note on this year, for this year?
It was $16.4 million.
Away from
So
this.
They just asked what the total fiscal note was on this
So
year, and it
do you
was,
want
it's
weighted
16.4
people units for students in
million.
school districts
additional.
necessarily exist in small schools. That's what the actual section is. It could be that.
I'm almost ready. At least it's almost.
Or
Okay,
it could just be, that's fine.
All right.
It could be, yep.
and do you wanna just, can you just add it into the whole motion of the recommended motion too? Well, why don't you go ahead and do this?
We just call
Then
funding
just
for
do the next
necessarily
motion.
existing small schools.
so do we want it the small school district scale of operations formula or the
We
funding? for
could just
necessary
say
small-
funding for necessarily existing small schools.
Throughout
Since there is that piece that, what's the waiver process in this?
Right, it's not just that, the purpose is changing, and so if it could be broader in the title, that would be good.
Alright, so does that look good? Everybody feel good with that?
Or necessarily existed, so
Thank you.
we need a vowel in there or else.
Existent.
Existent.
Stacks.
We need a vowel, we're all corrected on the public record.
You're trying to avoid that. Alright,
That really was a joke.
I'm laughing.
All right.
Go
So,
ahead, Chair.
Chair, my motion is that the committee amend R 277-445 by striking the current title and replacing with funding for necessarily existent small schools.
Great. Members, there's a motion on the floor that the committee amend R 277-445 by striking the current title and replacing with funding for necessarily existent small schools. Members, please, all those in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And then let's go ahead with the next motion on the rule.
I'm happy to make that as
Okay.
well. I just should have sat closer.
I can make it, that the committee
on your
approve
screen now.
R 277-445 classifying, funding for necessarily existent small schools. Draft 2 on first and final reading and forward it to the board for approval on second and final reading.
Great, thank you. So notice you changed the title in that too, on the rule. Is that what we want?
we need to keep the motion the same because the title doesn't actually change until it goes through the.
Well, that's true.
process.
Okay. But will the title change on the rule and the incorporated document both?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so let's,
You want me to do it again?
yeah, if you will.
Nope, that's fine. Thank you. That the committee approve R 277-445 classifying small schools as necessarily existent draft 2 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor that the committee approves R 277-445 classifying small schools as necessarily existent draft 2 on first reading and forward to the board on approval for second and final reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Let's go to 3.3, school construction oversight, inspections, training, and reporting incorporated document. You may remember we recently had, lots of conversations about this. So looks like, Brett, are you gonna be talking to us today?
I'm gonna have some school safety
I
capabilities
know.
as well.
Okay, it's gonna be Chantel Coda, Brett Larson, and Dean Baxter, all here today? No? Chantel
Will be here soon. She's hopped into a meeting.
Okay, and tell me your name again.
Ashley, the fellow.
Ashley, that's right.
Yes.
Ashley, thank you. Welcome. Okay,
Thank you, Chair. The first item up is our incorporated document. So this is our school safety manual. This is a new version. This is the 2025 version. So you'll see that there are some changes to the date that will be coming up in the rule, as well as we've changed the date on the manual. There's a few changes in the first little bit on in our index, just to make sure that all the pages lined up and to add the section on school safety and security requirements. The most significant changes you'll find on page 52 of this document, or 51, if you're going by page numbers on the actual document. And what we're doing here is we're adding in some language to ensure that both the rule and the document are used, depending on which one the school is going to, that specify the requirements for the universal key access boxes. This was a
new requirement that schools are required to have from this last legislative session, HB 40, from by Representative Wilcox, and it basically requires that schools have a universal access key box that first responders could use to then get access to the building. And so we school safety teams work together with the school safety committee, and they've come up with some of the requirements that we were required to do in rule for those access boxes. Additionally, we have also from HB 40 a requirement when schools are being newly built or being renovated to have AEDs placed inside those schools. And the school safety team and school safety committee have come up with some requirements on the AEDs as well. One of the main things to look at, and this is both in the rule and in this manual, is that the AED is an automated external defibrillator, so used for CPR, it gives the electrical shock.
TSS, PVI, and we're in a whole different place.
See how many.
One of the main things
The mind
to,
shift. Yeah, you have to.
sorry,
So I apologize, Greg. I couldn't
no worries.
associate AED. My fault. I know what it is, but I couldn't associate it in this realm.
We're shifting from the world of curriculum acronyms to the world of safety acronyms.
So it gives electrical shocks when somebody needs CPR to help restart the heart. One of the main things to be aware of on this is that we put a shall in there that an AED be in the main office. And talking with the school safety team as well as the school safety committee, we thought that that would be one location where anybody walking into a school could find, even if they weren't familiar with the school, they could find the main office, know where the AED is. So in the event of emergency, when you're going back to your small brain and you're trying to figure out, okay, I need to find an AED. If you didn't happen to know the school well because you're just a visitor from outside, you could find the main office, grab the AED and go. Additionally, there's a requirement for 500 feet involving areas, gymnasiums, auditoriums, any portable or temporary outbuilding, and in the centralized locations of buildings, so kind of the center of that building. So as long as there's an AED within 500 feet of those areas, the school safety team thought that would be the safest for our students and also give access to AEDs so that you didn't have to run too far. In the event you can't remember where the one is closer, you could go to the main office, which might be farther than 500 feet. But if we have them spaced out so that they're close to these main gathering areas where a cardiac arrest could happen or some other emergency, that was best practice that was found to be. So that's what's in our incorporating document. It is also a preview of what's coming in the rule. But I let you guys ask any questions you have, and the state safety teams here as well.
So why not less than 500 feet? That's well over a football field.
I could take a stab, and then if Brad, you want to go ahead and give more details, or Chantel, your team. The idea was that AEDs are expensive, and there's no funding in HB 40 for AEDs necessarily. And so, I don't know how big your school is. You know, you can do more AEDs if you want to, but we were trying to do a minimum that we thought would be get us to a safety level that was acceptable. And I'll let Brett and Chantel speak to whatever else.
There's a Brett Larson School Safety Center coordinator. In conversations amongst the School Safety Center, our liaison from the Department of Public Safety coordinated with his folks, the Department of Public Safety, who oversees EMS. And that was a recommended guideline, in addition to what you were talking about, the cost, but also kind of some best practices that are out there. So this does take the measurement from somebody who has nothing to providing something in the building, but also in conversations with some of the school districts, some are following this. They didn't want to allow, we wanted to allow flexibility for LEAs as far as what the AEDs look like, because there's a vast amount of technology that could be required and things like that. But as far as the 500 feet specifically, that was just a recommendation from DPS and making sure it's not too overburdensome for the LEAs, but also making sure that they are more accessible than just maybe just one in the front office, because we want to make sure that we are providing that opportunity of saving lives when necessary. But I'm totally open up to you, to your feedback and recommendations for those changes.
So then my question would be, what happens when the front office is locked? You have a basketball game, the front office is locked, you have 700 people in that auditorium, and your front office is locked, and we have a small school, and that's within 500 feet. Because there are some schools in this state that aren't even a football field wide or long.
I would hope, can I respond?
Please, yes.
That this is the minimum that we're asking. We would hope and best practices, and we even had conversations. So as a school safety center, we also have what's called a playbook where we like, here are best practices and things to follow. And that's been part of the conversation of adding those things to our playbook on, hey, really, here's what is in rule or statute, but best practices if you want to go above and beyond that, right? So here's the basic, the safety measurement that we want everyone to comply with, but best practices would be to build upon that.
Hopefully, if it's a school activity, there would be an administrator there, but if it was a rental activity, a rented activity, then that was really more difficult.
Even in school activities, those administrators are run very thin, and oftentimes there's an administrator on duty. And let's just be honest, sometimes they don't have all the tools that they need to function in that space, but they're there and in charge.
Well, that's true.
Let's be honest, they're a body in the building. They are a body in the building, but we need to acknowledge that they might not even know where that AED machine is.
Yeah.
And that is my concern. And I think a football field and a half is a long way from 700 people who are starting to exit a facility in the state of an emergency. So somebody runs to go get that thing and they're facing oncoming traffic coming back.
Sure, I miss.
Well, putting them closer is not gonna solve the problem of if they don't know where it is. But I've been in this space for a little while anyway, of after-school activities. The people that the LEAs have watching, they have keys, they are trained. This isn't new, right? To anybody. We've been doing training on AEDs for years. They are required in schools already. LEAs know what, like this, yeah, this is not new. Putting one closer is not gonna change anything. I'm comfortable where this is. I understand your questions, and there's gonna be others that share your questions and concerns, but I think we're in good shape. I think you guys have done it. Chair, great job.
Yes.
If I may, I think Member Bob should bring up a good point. What if the door is locked and there's some kind of emergency and heaven forbid we can't find the administrator? Maybe putting it outside of the main office, but we did want it, our thought was put it by that main office so that you could easily find where that main hub was, and it could just be outside. That could be a thing. And then I know I think the school safety team would love to have an AED in every classroom if they could. And one of our big conversations was around cost. And since we were requiring things, we wanted to make it so that, we didn't put anybody out because of the money thing, because AEDs, I think on the low end run around 2.5 to 3 grand for a low end model AED. So I'm sure they would love more, but this is kind of what we came up with minimum, but open to whatever you guys believe is best.
When you read this, when I'm looking back over the language, it looks to me like it does require an additional one outside the office, because it says one is required.
What's your page number?
51 and
It's on the
52.
screen.
It says one is required to be located in the main office, and additional are required within, and maybe all these things within 500 feet, but you still need one additional one somewhere accessible for these other areas. Sounds to me like they need 2. Is that a minimum of 2 if it's a small school? Am I reading that right? That would answer your question, I think, because it would be accessible outside of the office. Maybe that's gonna be up for interpretation by.
I don't know. I think my school has 2 in each building, which is pretty small, but I'm not sure if it's a required. That's a great question.
I mean, it reads that way to me. Anyway, should we continue on and?
Sure.
Do you have more? Okay. Any other questions from board members? And there was no fiscal note for this, right?
Not for the AED specifically, but
There is 25 million allocated for House Bill 40 of this year. It wasn't designated toward anything specific, but we think it will likely be taken up by some of the already mandated requirements. So that's our anticipation with that 25 million. So I would consider this an unfunded mandate.
Is the legislature looking at funding this incrementally year after year after year? Because like one of my charter schools in my area came to me and said, if I get into compliance with this code, I will go out of business. Like I can't stay in business, the financial requirements. So what's the plan long-term to help fund some of the requirements?
I can speak to that if you'd like. Shanta Koda, Director of School Safety and Student Services. So there isn't currently a plan in place. There are certainly conversations, and I can say that with conversations I've had with those who are leading the charge with school safety, that there's the desire to continue to get funding. I think you all saw in the last legislative session there, we were here, then we were here, then we were here. And so I know that there is the desire to move forward, but there isn't currently a plan in place.
Might be helpful for them. I'm just, never mind. It's like, it's just to incrementally require these things so everybody's not out of compliance. No LEA wants to be out of compliance, but sometimes there are things.
That's a question that I had as well is we're gonna look at this rule and document what's happening. I mean, there's more to come. Would that be accurate? Are we gonna see more changes in this document? As this, I'm asking to see the future, I just don't know. Like,
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we're just working off of House Bill 40, which is the latest legislation. I know in speaking with Chief Pennington, who's our state security chief, he feels comfortable with where we are. I mean, every year, things can come up. But I wanted to also speak to, there is that 10-year piece that he has added into his role as well. So schools have 10 years to come into full compliance. But even within that, if there's a plan in place, like if schools are showing a good faith effort, that is going to be considered. So it's not that, certainly we would want all schools to be in compliance because that's, where we want the state to be. That being said, there is an understanding that there are some barriers to that. And a lot of that includes fiscal barriers. That compliance piece, keep in mind that there is that 10-year window, and as schools are kind of looking at what they currently have based on a needs analysis and using that school safety needs assessment, they can kind of pick and choose how they move forward or progress through that timeline. And then certainly if there's some outstanding feature that just can't be met, they can write a letter to Chief Pennington and work with him as well.
So to whom, when you say that good faith effort will be considered by whom? What's the governing body here? Do we have oversight over this compliance, or is it all Chief Pennington? Or has someone communicated to us the level of oversight and monitoring that we're supposed to have in this space?
Great question. So there's very much a shared responsibility. So some things are explicitly under Chief Pennington, some things are still under USBE purview. But if you look at which we'll talk about in 400 here shortly, if you look at that compliance framework, it's very much a shared when we get to levels 1 through 3. And then when we get to levels 4 and 5, there is a shift there that you'll notice that DPS oversees, which would be Chief Pennington's office.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Chair, before you make
Yes.
any motions, if I may, if it is the board's idea to maybe make the AD a little bit more accessible, especially when offices are locked, we would need to change the language. Instead of saying located in the main offices, we say something like outside or at the main offices, something like that. Just to make it not mandatory that it be inside the main office, which might not be a bad idea.
You could amend that if you wanted to that way, but I think this additional takes care of that problem. But what do you think? Do you want to? What page are you on again? It's the same one that's on
52.
See, I kept reading. Yeah, top of 52. Do you feel like the additional takes care of that problem, or do you want to change that to located at or near the main office?
That would be language I think is better. I'm just thinking through my career, the number of times I've had 150 kids in there and I was all by myself.
Yeah. You want to make that motion?
The idea that an administrator is around when fine arts directors are having rehearsals is it's just not true. And it might be in some buildings, but it's not a good broad brush statement. When the football team is out there, an administrator on duty is not a thing. And in some of our small schools, there's not a football field distance between the building and the football field. Like it just is. That's the only one there. So at or near, I would be okay with that. Where is that
Make the
language?
motion to amend. It's
Because I've got this big long paragraph here and I'm not seeing what you're seeing.
Oh, it's at the top of 52. It's at the top
Oh.
of 52.
End of your first line.
Oh, yeah, so then I would move to amend that on page 52, we amend that sentence, that one AED is required to be located at or near the main office.
Okay, thank you. There's a motion on the floor that the top of page 52, second sentence, be amended to read one AED is required to be located at or near the main office. Members, please vote. Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed?
I,
That passes unanimously. Thank you. And then I'll go ahead and put forward this next recommended action that the committee approves R277-471 incorporated document, school construction resource manual draft 1 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading. Any discussion to the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And no.
I,
Okay, any opposed?
No.
Yes, okay, so that passes with, member Bogus opposed. And I think for all of these, as we're recording, we'll just note that member Kelly, member Kelly, Vice Chair Kelly is absent today. 3.4. Now we're on school construction, oversight, inspections, training, and reporting amendment. And we have our same folks here. Okay, we'll turn the time over to you again.
Thank you, Chair. This is R277-471, school construction oversight, inspections, training, and reporting. You'll notice our first change is on line 3 to change the title to add in the oversight category. Since this rule hasn't been amended since our oversight categories were in place, we decided to go ahead and update the rule. The second change is in line 21, and you'll see that's the oversight category, which was category 2. Because we don't have a dedicated team for monitoring this, we decided that category 2 would probably be the most appropriate of our oversight categories. And so that's linked to our rule R277-111. And then as you've seen the preview before, if you scroll down to R277-471-4, which is on page 4 of this document, you'll see that lines 101 down to lines 133 are the new part. There is slight changes in this from the incorporated document, and the change would be that it does require LEAs to do a few things like monitor and replace if things are damaged or destroyed. And so some of those more specifics that were just to the LEA and not necessarily to the construction part were left in the rule, not necessarily in the construction manual. And then again, it has the AED, which has the same language that hasn't been amended yet, that says in the main office rather than at or near. So I wanted to make you aware that that language was different.
Okay,
Chair.
great, thank you. Yes, Deputy Superintendent Jones.
So can we do a deeper dive on, so there's the framework, which is governed by Rule 111. We've applied a 2 to it under the, without getting into the details of 111. We recently had the school construction audit where it basically said we're not monitoring to the extent that we should. My question is through you, Madam Chair, to policy, is by assigning a 2 to it, then does that mean that it implies that we are notifying the public, we're notifying everyone that we don't have the resources to do this? This is what my understanding why we implemented the framework. So I just want to make sure that before the committee ratifies this, that there's a clear understanding of the application of 111 to this. And then subsequently, the fact that with assigning it a 2, we're basically saying we do not have the resources to monitor even the monitoring of the monitors that are monitoring in the monitoring. So, I mean, I really feel this is very important because I feel like sometimes when we go through the rules, we're not really doing this deeper dive into what the implications are of assigning a 2 and then do it, because that's what I thought the framework was designed to do, was to communicate that this is, by whatever assignment. If it's a 4, then, we really have no choice but to monitor and find the resources to do it. So,
I mean, I appreciate the question. I think it's more about what we understand the code expectation. So it's a communication piece. Of course, with that always comes funding. And this audit has been difficult because we have the funding for one person, essentially, right?
Right.
And so in the audit, they hired a team of people to go and do a full
Well, they
scouring.
just sample. No, it wasn't a full sample, only a few of the LEAs.
Okay.
Right.
We don't even have funding for a team
Right, yes, ma'am.
to be doing that. So I think the conversation is to be had. I think the financial conversation is a byproduct, but it's not, we're not assigning a 2 to say we don't have enough money. We're saying this is our understanding of what is currently in code, that we have to monitor to this level. This much is our responsibility, because quite a bit right now legally is the responsibility of the LEA, and all of the funding is local property taxes. We don't even disperse the funding that they're using for the most part for constructing schools, but for small.
So follow up.
Yes.
So this is the key though too, and we do have some LEA representation here. I'm not even sure that the LEAs can meet the requirements of monitoring for repair or, what we're saying in there. So if we're saying that, you have to monitor, will you read that again for us, Greg, on?
You want the category 2 read?
Yeah.
Okay.
See, so that, my point is here is that when we write a rule, we say, look, you have to do this. I'm not even sure they have the resources to do what we're specifying or requiring in the rule, right? Because I'm not sure they have the resources to do that as well. So I just, want to make sure that our expectations, because what inevitably happens is when we get audited, they look at the rule and then they say, well, they're not doing it, so you're not doing it. You're not doing what making them do what they're supposed to do by the rule. So
Can we, well, actually, I'm gonna hold mine because Member Bogus has a question, and then I'm gonna go to your question too and get some input from you and possibly from the LEA's representatives here.
So to be fair, my question is not about this.
Okay, so you wanna hold for just a
I'm
minute?
happy to hold.
Okay, let's go, can we address this question or concern about resources, and where's this language in this rule coming from that we're requiring them to monitor and repair? I mean, and how quickly does that mean? A lot of questions come into play, but can we have some answers to that question?
I can start with, I was told, and it's great that Deputy Newey isn't here right now, that this is in no way a response to the audit. It is strictly due to the requirements that came through HB 40, and just happens to fall at the time that the audit came out, and happens to be about construction, which also happens to be what the audit is. So with that being said, to answer the question on what a 2 is, category 2 is the superintendent will not specifically dedicate staff to the program or set of requirements, and superintendent will provide assistance as needed to an oversight entity implementing the requirements.
So, Madam Chair, if I may, what the implications of that are is that I'm not going to send anybody down there to do that. Because we're applying Rule 1111 or 1111, the framework and we're assigning it a 2, that means that we're not going to go down and monitor that they're monitoring for the repairs. We're requiring it, but to do it,
But what it really means is that we didn't get funding to do it, right?
it's an
We got-
unfunded
Did
mandate.
we get any funding to go to all the schools and monitor these repairs?
If I can. So Chair,
Brent's gonna say he's gonna monitor. Don't make me look bad, man.
so
I like these in-person meetings.
I'm gonna give some context to a lot of these school safety requirements, including the lock boxes, the AEDs. So Chief Pennington's team will be going out and doing, just like the fire marshal's office, going out and doing reviews, and they'll be impromptu. They will not be, well, they're gonna stop by and they will do evaluations and determining if they are following and if they are compliant. So that's where it gets between us and them on the monitoring cycle, and we're playing this collaboration between us. But that is the expectation
And
and
choose appropriate for us because
Yeah.
they're gonna do the monitoring on their end.
reporting back to us. That's our understanding.
And then the LEAs are gonna just be on the hook for the money.
But some of the LEAs are just going. We gotta pay more for special ed or for youth running kids and what, so how do we do this? We can't do everything
Yeah,
with the limited funds we have available.
yeah. But it sounds like this language is all in code, so it has to be there.
It is in code, it's in 50 G 805.
So before we move off of this topic, do the LEA representatives want to make any comment about this? We're all between a rock and a hard place, so I don't know if
No,
there's anything to.
Todd Harbor, Business Administrator, Grant School District. Even before this was codified, we were already going through our own exercise of updating AEDs, trying to stay on top of them. I appreciate the cost estimate of 2,000 to 3,000. That's not the number we're dealing with. We have a very different number. And we're just, we get it. It's important to do. It'd be great to have some financial support in the exercise. But it is a rock, between a rock and a hard spot. And we get the need. And in some of our challenges, trying to take care of outside spaces is really difficult because AEDs get vandalized, they disappear, the pads and the batteries disappear. It's securing it. So it's not just the front office. Can we get keys to get into the front office? It's like, how do you have a box around the AED sufficiently secured so that people aren't randomly tampering with it? It's a big deal. It's great to be in compliance, but it's a big deal to actually maintain it, repair it, keep the pads up to date. It's not just like you have a first aid kit and when things expire, you replace it out. It's a bigger deal.
Thank you, and
And
Royce, I
Madam Chair, if I
assume the
may.
charter's the same.
Yeah, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, Royce Fantastic, Utah Association of Public Charter Schools. I would agree with what Todd said. I'll just comment on sort of what Randy was saying and sort of the way this is playing out at the legislature. And it seems that there is a significant divide in terms of priorities between what the House wants and what the Senate wants. And so schools and obviously also the state board get caught in that disagreement. It's going to play itself out over time. I know we all appreciate the recognition on the part of the legislature that says, hey, no one can come into compliance immediately. That's just not feasible. But this is very much a fiscal challenge, and where you've got the House and the Senate sort of prioritizing it differently, there's a lot of uncertainty about how do we also prioritize compliance.
And you're referring to the 10-year, the opportunity now for 10 years to get into compliance.
Yes, and the House would like to see not just a much larger pot of money. I mean, they prioritized $25 million one time this year. The House would like to see ongoing money dedicated to this. The Senate approaches it differently. That's all I'm
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you for my little tizzy fit on that. So, thank you. That's all I
Do
have.
you have any more? Okay, moving on.
I
Member
enjoyed it
Bogus.
myself.
Thank you.
Okay, Member Bogus.
So I have a question about lines 101 and after that. It talks about these universal access key boxes. And there's lots of mass events where that's how they gained access. So why are we mandating this? If that's how they gained access to those rooms inside the school was by violating that universal access box at the front entry of the building. Is this something that was discussed someplace else and I just missed the conversation, or?
Is there someone that can answer that question?
I don't know of any instances where universal access key boxes were used to access. That's news to me. I don't know, Brett, if you know.
Yeah, we spoke with the state fire marshal on this, and there's different levels of lock boxes, right? And we could have put in here, like, what is the best practice? But you're talking about prescribing to LEAs that, hey, here's even more unfunded requirements. No matter what, with the lock boxes, the companies that the LEAs go with, really, they should be ensuring that they can't gain access. We had the same question to the state fire marshal on have buildings been accessed through lock boxes. I'm not sure what all the research is on that, but really the requirement for this, why we're putting it in rule is pretty much because the legislature said you will make this rule for lock boxes. So that's the reason why it's added here. Both lock boxes and AEDs came from House Bill 40 saying we will make rule for these items.
Theoretically, there's a steel box that's secure that only the fire marshal and the police chief are gonna have access to.
Yeah, and they give examples and it's hard to get
Sorry.
into them. But
I apologize. Being online, I'm a little more whatever. And EMT, right? Didn't I read that in here? That the emergency services.
personnel.
yeah,
I think, again, in my limited experience, it's the fire marshal and the police chief. The EMT usually arrives when school is in session, when people are happening. The first responders for the major event of, for example, a school shooting or a fire or something like that would be the fire marshal and police chief. Additionally, I don't, and unless the fire marshal or police chief is accessing that key to come in and shoot, I don't anticipate, and maybe, like, reports are different, somebody spending several minutes trying to break into a lockbox before going in to cause damage into a school. It's just.
I don't think they do it in that moment. I do think they do it outside that moment. It would happen.
It's right in the front of the building. If like our lockbox went missing, LEAs would know pretty quick. I'm not saying there's 0%, Christina. I'm saying it's highly unlikely that it's not going to be accessed through that. I think it's the safest route is what I'm hearing from Brett.
So are these digital or are they keyed?
if I can, so is it okay? So being electronically monitored, it could look like, hey, if it's tampered with, there could be an alarm on it. It could be that it's being electronically monitored by video surveillance. And so there's different ways. We wanted to allow that flexibility to the LEA. And speaking to Board Member Jaimes and your comment, I do want to just share, like, with what the state fire marshal said. In a real event, they likely won't take the time going through the lockbox. They will break through the school to stop the major event that's taking place. And so this is another level of access for emergency responders when needed, but that's not the only way they will enter a building during an emergency situation. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that.
I think they break in.
So if it's on fire, they're not gonna stop by the lockbox to get access to those.
That was almost his exact comment.
Well, I've thought through lots of permutations in my head, many nefarious and many not, and I don't see the purpose for this. That is, I guess that's maybe that's a legislative question.
Go ahead,
Sam
Gary.
Pierce, Finance Director. I helped with the fiscal note many times, as Rhett knows. So 53G 8805, the statutory place where they define universal access key box. It says there it means a UL standard 1037 compliant secure container. And those containers have requirements by underwriting laboratories that, as I understand it, the minimum level is attack level 1, which requires it to withstand a 5-minute attack using common hand tools by one technician. It goes up to a level 3, which would withstand a 10-minute attack with the most advanced tool sets, but that minimum standard is that 5-minute attack.
I think that's helpful. Thank you. Yeah.
Chair, I think the reason why they have this from my research is during the Uvalde shooting event, when police responded, one of the problems they had is everybody did a good job of locking the doors. And police couldn't get through those doors. And so they were waiting and that allowed the shooter to continue to shoot while police were there trying to get in to the building. So that's the impetus behind the universal key access boxes, is to give law enforcement access to the whole school so nobody has to have a waiting period. There's other ways of getting in, breaking windows, using battery ramps and things, but that would be the impetus behind why this is a push from HB 40.
That's helpful. I'll go ahead and move that the committee approves R277. Wrong one.
Chair, did you, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Did you want to change that language down with the AED to match what is in your
Probably should do that.
your manual?
Can you give me the line numbers?
Line 128.
So at least we're on the same line numbers. I would move that we change the word in to at or near in line 128.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor to change the word in to at or near in line 128. Members all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes unanimously with Board Member Kelly absent. Thank you. And then we need to go ahead and move the main motion then for 3.4. I can do that. That the committee approves R277-471 school construction oversight inspections, training and reporting draft 1 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading.
As amended.
As amended. Thank you. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes unanimously with Member Kelly absent. Give them those to us in this first one. Before three. Yes. Is it the one that had to do with that incorporated document? Yes. Yes. Thank you, experts. We appreciate your help.
Yeah, thank you.
Moving on to 3.5, Weber School District Statewide Online Education Provider Application. Tammy Gear, I think we have online with us.
I am here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Director Gear. Can you give us a bit of background on this?
Yes. So each entity that wants to become an online provider must submit an application to become a provider following the rules of R277726. We are pleased that Weber School District has submitted an application under Innovations Online to become a statewide online education provider. They are in the room if you have questions for them.
Great, thank you. Are they the 8th or the 9th then in the SOEP program?
That is a really good question. I am new to the SOEP program. We did have some that have left because of the private going to Odyssey. So I'm sorry, I don't know what the actual count is. I apologize.
That's okay, but I think it would be interesting if maybe we could just have that sent to us.
I will look it up while you're asking.
We are total.
Yeah.
And I'd be interested which ones have left or closed due to the UFA. Thank you. Any other questions? Or is this the application?
Yeah, I'm just curious, you can answer Christina real quick.
I apologize, I just remember the backup has one document. And my question is this really the application?
Director Gear, did you hear that question? I know you're brand new. We're transitioning over to you from Director Kellis, but if you can.
What they have submitted is the application. It's a pretty short application.
And so you review the application? Do you review any of their materials and such?
So we've reviewed the application. This is just their application to to become an online provider. And then we work with them to set up the courses that they will be offering and help get signed up.
That makes sense.
Just to make them an online provider and work with them to get everything set up.
That makes sense. This is them saying we're interested in doing the work. Can we get started?
Correct. Yes.
Yes. Member questions?
So it says they're currently serving 30,000 students in throughout Utah with this innovation online. Is that accurate?
May I answer? Or ask Weaver to answer. So many LEAs have their own online programs for their students. This is to be a provider for statewide. So Weaver, Nick, and counterpart could probably answer more questions. But yes, they do online education. This is just to provide it statewide.
Chair Hymas, would you like to hear from our Weaver District folks that are online?
Well, I think my question was answered. If they want to offer additional, that's fine.
Would you like to confirm that answer?
Yeah. Can you guys hear us okay?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Hey, my name is Blake Pope. I'm with the Weaver School District, and then Nick Harris is to the right of me. He's the director of our digital teaching and learning department. So the document that you see in front of you is kind of a summarized version of the full application that we submitted. The full application goes into all the details of how we're going to, provide special education services or run testing, or it also makes us have our local LEA school board approve the curricular materials that we use, all of that. That summary that you see in front of you, that's Weaver School District has about 35,000 students in it total. As far as the students that we serve for online, we serve just over 2,000 students online between the grades of 7 and 12 here in Weaver School District. So I hope that provides some clarification. We're here to answer any other questions that we can.
So that makes sense. The district is 30,000, but 2,000 participate.
Okay. It's okay.
But you're only serving students within your district, and you're asking now to open up for others who want to join.
That's correct. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Any other questions?
So the fiscal note has some interesting language in it. Not the fiscal note, this other thing. Where does it say?
To go to Matt while you're looking that up. Sure.
I'll try my best if it would help to explain how the fiscal part works, if that helps.
That's not my question. Let's pause on that one for a second.
Pause for a minute. Go ahead.
Let me ask, and this could be to any staff. One of the things that we saw for a little while was they just started pumping schools in without understanding the domino effect. So I guess I'm asking for this as well. What does adding this to the SOEP or making this a state program, what's the domino effect? Is this a good idea? I'm not in this space well enough to know. Is this a good idea? Is this a good idea for Weaver only? I know it will serve kids. What's that?
It depends how good the product becomes.
Well, is that it? I mean, is it, are families going to suffer as a result of this? And maybe Weaver has an answer. I don't know. I'm just a little hesitant to jump headfirst with another program, not understanding. I mean, why are you different? Do you just want to do this because? I mean, is this an opportunity to expand? So you're taking it? Like, what's your goal here? What's your motive? Things of that nature.
And I
can't see this here in the document, you know, like.
Yes. Let's hear from, go ahead, Director Gear, and then let's hear from Weber.
Okay. So just so there's a little bit more clarification, we have a number of online providers that provide the content. USBE does not specifically provide the content. We're the LEAs and the online providers. Having more providers doesn't change the program. It just gives more options for students looking for classes to take online. It gives them options and additional online providers so that they can fill their courses, fill their schedule with the courses they need. It's just to give more variety. It's not, yeah, it just gives them a little bit more variety. We also have, SOEP has grown substantially over the last few years. And so having more providers cover the students that are looking to take classes online is very helpful.
Thank you. Weber, folks,
Yeah,
can we?
that's a great question. As far as our intentions of wanting to become a statewide online education provider, we, since the pandemic in Weber School District, have seen a substantial growth in our online program. And, you know, we've become really proud of the courses that we've been able to offer, and especially the viability that they have. A lot of our students here in Weber School District have leave with a pretty positive experience of this. To put that in perspective, in the summer of 2024, we had just under 400 students taking 600 enrollments with us just over the summer. And this year, for the summer of 2025, we are currently at about 1,300 enrollments. And so a lot of students have loved our online program here in the district. And so because of that, we really think that we can provide a utility to the state, like Director Gear was saying, by providing students even more options to what they have right now.
How does your academic rigor compare with your online courses to your brick and mortar courses, and who kind of determines that?
That's a very good question. Our academic rigor it's very similar to the brick and mortar courses. In fact, we employ our own teachers to be part of our online offerings. And so we're not purchasing content from some out-of-state provider or someone that we don't know. When our students take our classes, they hear videos created by our teachers, and the curriculum is I would say absolutely comparable to the curriculum they would get if they were sitting in the classroom.
And all of it is core aligned as well too with Utah standards.
Cindy,
That's
Chair.
awesome. Thank you. Yes, Chair Hymas.
One more question for me to Weber, if I could.
Please.
There's apparently there's 6 out there. Why do we need you? Why a 7th? I know that sounds like a rude question, but why are you going to stand out? What do you bring differently than the others?
Yeah, Director Gear answered that.
Did I miss that? Okay.
Yeah, she just said because the SOEP program has grown, when you bring another provider on, it increases choices for the SOEP students.
Well, I get that, but what's the choice? I can sit in front of a computer. What are you doing differently from?
Let's hear from Weber. What are you going to do differently?
Sorry.
Yes.
No, I think that's a really great question. I think it's one that absolutely has to be asked whenever you guys are looking at another provider to provide these options. I think when it comes to having innovation online join this group of already great SOEP providers, the thing that we offer is the flexibility and growth that our vision is centered around, which is continual improvement and trying to make these offerings as relevant and rigorous as possible. Our model, like we said, we're core aligned, but part of that is we try to make our courses assessments project based when they can. We try to move away from the traditional online experience of, hey, we're going to get into a message board and leave 2 comments and then comment to 2 other people. We try and make it something that's that the student can really take with them and have that similar experience to what they might have in the traditional environment. But then, as all of you know, the student that's looking for a lot of these online options, it's not as simple as it used to be, where it might just be one student that really didn't like going to school in person. A lot of our students out there who are leveraging SOEP programs are those who would like to create more room in their schedule, for instance, so they can participate in more electives or seminary or something like that. The online offering now is kind of something that everybody can take advantage of, rather than just a handful of folks. And so what we're, I guess, to answer that specific question, what are we offering that the other people aren't? In a way, we're trying to offer something where we're looking to build it and grow. We're compared to some of the other providers, we are smaller, but that also means that we like to adapt and move with the needs that our learners have.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I do think it's, well, I'll also hold that. Thank you for those comments. Director Gear, and then I'll be seeking a motion, members. I have one question.
Your question, that we currently have 5 providers. We lost one, Arizona State University, through JUAB due to the switch over to Odyssey. So we currently, after they leave, we have 5. Weaver would be number 6.
So ASU is solely going to be doing the private school model then?
Correct.
Interesting. Very interesting. Member Vargas has a question.
So it's up here at the top, it says dollar amount, fiscal impact, yes, dollar amount, redistribution of funds. So, and I understand that it might seem, I don't know, redundant or rhetorical, but in order for this to be funded, other LEAs have to lose money.
So, could I?
Go ahead, Director Gear.
Okay, so the way this works is if a public school student, we also serve homeschool students, but if a public school student signs up for a class, the LEA does pay for that class out of the funding that they receive for that student. So the LEA still get the WPU, but then they pay for that class. And then that money goes to the online provider to pay for that. And then if they are if they fall under the category of the necessary small schools, there is a grant that will help offset that cost for those LEAs that are smaller. So.
Can I follow up? Yes, Member Vargas.
So then what happens if a student enrolls full-time? And let's say they're from Ogden and they want to go full-time SOEP in Weber.
So they are required to be, if they're not a homeschool school student, they are required to be signed up for a primary LEA, primary school. And they are only allowed to take up to 6 online classes. After that, that LEA has the right to reject going above that. And they cannot take more than a full course load without them being an early graduate. This can, if you wanted to graduate early, you could take extra classes, but that has to be marked, and that also goes into extra funding. But if so there's limits to that, they are still the LEA's student. It just they pay for those specific.
They can receive special ed services and speech and all that through the LEA.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, Member Booth.
I recommend that the board approve Weaver School District's Innovation Online 7-12
as a statewide online education provider.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor that the committee approves R277-726 statewide online education program draft 3 on first reading and forward it to the board for approval on second and final reading.
Did you just read that?
Did I do the wrong?
Yeah, I think you read the 3.6.
I am on 3.6.
We're on 3.5.
We have two different SOEP motions. Thank you very much. Okay.
3.5.
There's a motion on the floor that the committee recommends that the board approve Weaver School District's Innovation Online 7 through 12 as a statewide online education provider. Members, thank you for your patience, and those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. So now we're moving on to another SOEP action item, R277-726. And we have Ben Rasmussen. Is he with us? And Director Gear. Hello, Director Rasmussen. Thank you.
Ben Rasmussen, Director of Law and Professional Practices. Good to be with the committee this morning. This rule had originally come to the committee, gone to the board, and then there were some changes that came about that we asked the board to send it back to committee. We kind of went back to the drawing board and did a major rewrite. So there's a lot of difference here. But the main substantive change that's different between the drafts that we sent prior deals with the funding for small schools. You'll see that begins on line 945 of the rule, and there's specific funding that goes for special populations. That was redone to align more, I think, with the NEST program. Throughout the rule, there's a number of technical changes that also incorporate changes in legislation. We're happy to answer any questions that you have about the changes in the rule that are proposed.
Members, any questions? I'll be seeking a motion.
I move that the committee approves R277-726 statewide online education program draft 3 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor that the committee approves R277-726 statewide online education program SOEP draft 3 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, and thanks, Director Rasmussen. Let's move on.
I was just going to say all of my rules should be that easy. Thank you.
They should be.
Is this the longest rule we have?
You should.
Over 1,000 lines? You believe how long that is?
No.
That's ridiculous.
Is this the longest rule we have? Really? It's long.
Probably close to it.
Well, you should come to a finance committee more often and have these great, efficient experiences. Let's go to 3.7. Deputy Superintendent Jones.
Will you invite Director Feld to the table too
Yes, Director Feld, please. Thanks, Jared.
So this agenda item, Madam Chair, was brought back because there was some additional information, data that the committee wanted. So we assembled that data and it's in the backups. The first item was you wanted to know how much more ongoing money and one-time money would be required. So Jared and his team do a document that's called a ROM, rough order of magnitude. So these are estimates. These are estimates. They're not. There could be some variance in them, but not much. I wouldn't say there would be much variance in them, but I think it would be a value add if the committee were to hear from Director Feld on how they came up with the amount of money, both one time and ongoing, and what the second and third level effects would be that on the Aspire system that is under the board's purview or control. So.
Yeah, thank you. This is a big conversation.
Yeah.
Much bigger than those just here in this committee, but we have some things to think about today. And they have some pretty big impacts on a lot of people. So well, let's go ahead and hear your information.
Jared Felt, USBE IT Director. So in the ROM, we've listed the current cost for what we spend on Aspire. So annual salary and benefits for our developers is $1 million, a little over $1 million per year. If we were to build out Aspire, we've estimated that we could, and we did that by taking the backlog, we call it a backlog of all the requirements that the Aspire users group that meets together. They prioritize what they feel is needed to bring Aspire up to the, and not quite the equivalent of a power school. I don't think we would ever get there. But that would be a one-time cost of $837,000. But the ongoing costs, we would need to obviously build out our operations. So those are the servers, the backend infrastructure for hosting the Aspire application, and that's an ongoing cost. Additionally, of what we already pay of $251,000 per year, and then we do have help desk staff that are on that do a lot of work with the different LEAs that are on Aspire. So setting up students, setting up their calendars, things like that. We would need an addition, and right now we have one dedicated person for that. If we were to build that out, now the hard part is estimating, okay, if we build out Aspire, how many LEAs are gonna move over, or maybe they'll drop off. But we estimate we would need 2 FTEs to handle any additional workload, then that we took that based on our largest school district is Box Elder. And if we had more, another 2 or 3 large districts that moved over, we would need, 2 additional FTEs for an ongoing cost of $240,000. Right now we spend about $120,000 on an FTE. That includes salary and benefits. So that's basically the ROM that we provided. Now, if you take it, and maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but paying for having the LEAs pay for Aspire, we've also included that. If you don't include what we currently pay, and just to take the future cost of Aspire, it comes out to about the cost for the future build out would be about $4.50 per student. But if you want to cover all of the costs that we, with what we currently pay and the future costs, it would be about $14 per student.
What do you mean sorry, do members have questions first? What do you mean when you say, if we're asking what it would cost in the future, why would we need to include what we currently pay?
Well, we wouldn't need to. That would be a decision that you as a board would need to make if you want, because we're already funded to, support and build Aspire.
Oh, because we're receiving funds. So if we continue to receive the same amount of funding, it would be $4.40 per student. If we don't receive that funding from the state and LEAs pay for it themselves, moving forward, it'd be $14 per student. What's the average cost of the vendors right now?
So I think we've included that.
So when we did some initial studies on this, and as part of the process related to One SIS, Madam Chair, the range is anywhere between $3.50 per student all the way up to around $11 to $13. It really does depend on how much capabilities that the LEA chooses for their particular vendor provided system. This is where we get into the aspects of interoperability, and the more that you want from a particular system, the more you're likely going to pay per student.
So that cost also varies based on the amount of students licenses you get too. You get quantities of scale there.
I think most all vendors, there might be some exceptions. I'll charge on a per student basis. So that's why we broke it down on the Aspire piece per student. So
if we decided to keep Aspire and we continued receiving a subsidy is probably the wrong word, but a subsidy from the state, or an amount from the state, it would be less than what we'd be paying for the vendors. But if we don't get the allocation from the state, it would be a little more. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, so just for clarity, so Director Felt had mentioned that right now we do have a source of ongoing money, right? And so I think the calculations we're trying to present to you is as if what would be required to get the additional 2 FTEs to it. And we broke it down so that, you know, I mean, if it's really a policy decision on, you know, whether to charge in the first place, but then do we charge a sufficient amount per student to cover the entire amount of funding, including what we're getting right now, right? Or just the amount needed to get the additional money for, that's how we broke it down for you. That's how it's broken down.
I appreciate that.
So, yeah, I mean, it's just to make, you know, an informed decision on either or. I mean, part of the policy decision or piece to this is whether or not, you know, we could continue to receive that ongoing funding that we're receiving right now to for the current level of FTEs and capabilities we have in there. So without charging, or what it would look like with charging.
That's helpful. I think it's important for the public who's watching to understand that in this current Aspire program that's operated through our office here, we have 103 LEAs, but that's about 12 to 14% of the students across the state. So it's a lot of our small LEAs are utilizing Aspire right now. And then I think you know, there is a data reliability piece. There's been talk of moving to one SIS system to increase data reliability. There's been talk from our LEAs to say, please give a handful of vendors an option, because if we change, it's going to change everything for our students, our parents, our teachers, our administrators, and we've kind of customized to where we want to be now. And then there's these financial considerations. So there are some big pieces to the puzzle that need to be considered. And what I'm seeing, if we stay with Aspire, from this initial 10 million that we've been given for this year from the legislature, we just moved off of this, but it's going to be a little over 1 million. It would be 1,077,000 to get up to EdFi standards is what I'm assuming, plus then the ongoing maintenance would be 491. Am I seeing that right?
Yeah, so let me just clarify a little bit. It's okay with you, sure.
Please.
So EdFi standards, it's not really EdFi standard. We're building that as we go.
Okay.
It's all of these additional backlog items, like updating the master calendar, scheduler, things like that.
Okay.
That the Aspire users group working with us, you know, as
I'd like to see long-term.
correct.
But other LEAs have the capability now with their systems and along those backlog items too. So trying to get everybody up to the same capabilities, same
Right.
level of delivery, those types of things. We're trying to match that.
Okay.
You know, but taking the lead from the user group on what the prioritization is for what they want to see in the system.
Right.
So.
And my feeling is if it's going to be subsidized by the state, we're probably never going to match that entirely. And I appreciate that you said that early on and recognize that. Because my feeling is if we keep Aspire, then it should be a good solid Honda. And then if the large LEAs want to pay the extra money, they can get a Cadillac version through Skyward or Power School or any of these vendors that are creating all the bells and whistles. But
however, just to have a good solid Honda,
it's going to
cost more
this much money.
as we
Right.
continue.
Correct.
I mean, it's going to continue.
And we
get
have to
more
maintain that
expensive.
Honda, so it lasts a
Correct.
little while. I have a question.
Yes, I will say the cost initially though was less than I thought it was going to be, and it's commensurate with the percentage of users that are on Aspire now. When you look at the percentage of the 10 million appropriation, remember Bogus?
So you talk about master calendar and there's other little twigs and bells and whistles. Is there any way we can use an API so that people can integrate their current software and not have to, like if they're using Microsoft or Google, can't we API that into it, into the system?
Sure.
Go ahead.
So we do have APIs that work with like Canvas and some of those other vendors, but they don't do like master calendaring. That's a core function of an SIS system. And so it's these core functions that need to be built out, like lottery system for the charter schools, things like that.
Okay, and so by master calendar, you're talking about student schedules.
Correct, yeah, not.
You're not
like
talking
a full
about,
calendar or
okay.
And I'm gonna throw another little wrench into what's happening on the landscape, is that Representative McPherson has required legislatively that we have a working group, it's 508, I believe.
Advisory,
HB 508,
HBO 508.
that an advisory committee is created that involves, I think, some LEAs and some state board members, or does it not?
State board members, the IT representation. It's a pretty robust.
Right, so what this committee will have to decide today is, do you or do we want to make a recommendation to the advisory committee? Or do we want to, by way of our motion, make a list of questions that we're hoping the advisory committee will answer? Based on some of these questions, what are the pros and benefits? What do they feel is the best? One, a few cap the number of vendors like we do with our finance systems. An open market field. Keep a state aspire in the mix, Honda model, or open it all up and just go outside vendors. I mean, do we want a list of questions for this group to answer?
Staff, what recommend? Well,
Deputy
yeah,
Superintendent
if I may, so to expand on your point, I have to say it this way, it is what it is. There's over 100 LEAs that are in Aspire right now. And what is it, 111,000 students or so, somewhere around there. So while there's a majority of LEAs using this system, it only represents approximately 12% of our overall student population. The so what of this is that because they're in the system, which is an SIS, which is Aspire, which is provided by the board, to stay in the lane or on the lungs of the committee, who represents the input of all of those stakeholders on whether or not Aspire does? They look to you, to the board, as being the one, you're providing the SIS to them. And most of them are charter schools, so we're trying to get to where we can bridge the input from the board with this requirement in there as it relates to an SIS, trying to keep all the other things constant with the fact that you're on the, it is what it is to it. So what I recommend is that we set conditions by way of a motion that recommends to the board that the Aspire system be addressed as part of the overall 508 requirements with input from the user group or users of Aspire, because they represent a lot of charter schools that have quote unquote skin in the game.
Yeah.
Well, not just charter schools, but three districts, right?
Are they not listed in the code for the advisory?
There's not, so there is representation from charter schools, right? That's part of the committee, but 99 charter schools, or I'm not sure how many exactly charter schools we have, may say, well, I'm not sure who even is representing me and speaking for me at 508. Is it the board? Because the board is the provider of the system. Much like we're gonna have other representation from districts that are gonna say, well, we use Skyward or we use Power School and this is what we can do and this is what the input is. It's just that, aspect of that is that what we're trying to do is ensure that the board, as the provider of the Aspire system, has a seat at the table for these 103, 104 LEAs that use that SIS. Because we're likely going to get different ideas or opinions on whether to keep Aspire, the juice is worth the squeeze to invest more money in it and do that. So that's why we were looking for guidance from this committee to make recommendations to the board. So back to board member Booth's question, staff, which, is a conglomerate of myself and IT. We're just recommending that the board, or the committee recommend to the board on, making sure that we're very tied into the 508 parallel process that's going on as well. Does that make sense?
Do we
I'm not
have
really
the
sure how to
authority
word
do
that,
Do
but
we have the authority to do that?
I
Or do we
think you
need to
do.
word it in a motion as a request to whoever's gonna be in charge of the 508 committee? But that's us, isn't it?
So
Yes, yeah, we're in
We-
charge of
putting
the,
that together, so I think we can make sure that there's adequate.
yeah, see, there's two parts to the 508 advisory council. There's data itself, and then there's the systems
Right.
part. This is the systems part, right? And so we're just trying to make sure that everyone has the opportunity through their particular provider of the SIS for input to 508. And as the board is the provider for the Aspire system.
And my question right now is, are we up to advice? Because regardless of what happens in the future to Aspire, whether we keep it or it goes the way of the world, right now, we have a responsibility for our LEAs who are on it to be compliant.
Correct.
Are we up to advice standards? And
Well, we will be working with, like, along the same parallel as the vendors are to be, so that it integrates with USIM. So
that will take this
that's-
additional $1 million or?
No, that's outside of
That's outside of
the
The
additional.
data standards for
This is to
system.
get us from a
Yeah.
VW Bug to a Honda.
Yeah, for example, like,
Is that?
yeah, there's like the auto scheduler. We've listed some of the high level big rocks that need to be done to get it up to a.
So for capabilities, if I may, Madam Chair, for capabilities and enhancements to Aspire that promote data quality, reliability, accuracy, that, as you all know, was called out in audit saying, we just don't have that. So if Aspire is going to continue, we have to get Aspire to be able to do that, just like we're demanding of LEAs who choose their own systems, right? So then, and inevitably though, or I mean, there's just no getting around this. We have to somehow, and it can be done through the 508 process, or, with the advisory committee, decide what the future of Aspire is. I mean, there's no way of getting around this. It's an either or at this point, right? Either we tried to provide 3 courses of action that you could consider making recommendations to the board, but now you can tweak those now that we know more about the fact that we have this 508 requirement, right? For the advisory council. So
for those listening, I'm just gonna read those out. I'm not making a motion right now. I'm waiting for members to see what you want to do. But, so there really are different courses of action listed here. And all of these really, I think would have to be, you'd at least have to add the language pending advisory, 508 advisory.
yeah,
Maybe.
well, if I may, ma'am, so we do have a board member that is assigned to the task force or to the advisory council. It would just really help, I think, that board member if they knew where the board is at with Aspire or what the users are
We're gonna
at.
have
and-
that conversation today.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Sure. I may just add to that a little bit. We have a staff member too, and a survey has already gone out to the LEAs, a subset of the all LEAs, asking questions about their SIS vendors, the costs, things like that. They're more high level, so I'm assuming a charter school would get that same survey and answer, we don't pay anything for Aspire, and go through those questions. So I think there's some level of surveying those Aspire user groups that are LEAs as well.
Yeah, and one of the questions for the advisory group is gonna be, do you wanna stay in Aspire? Right now it's free, but if you long-term have to pay to help maintain, are you still gonna wanna do that, or you wanna go to the vendors? I mean, we really have to figure that out. So some of our options are continue to provide and operate the Aspire system at current levels of personnel and funding, which is it's gonna keep us like is that a right analogy? Like a VW Bug, like we're doing the basics, but it won't get us to Honda.
Yeah, we're doing the work, but we don't have the capacity to get everything done.
Okay, so that's a choice to stay here.
So Madam Chair, if I may, I do want to go on the record saying it's not just about the EdFi standards, right? It's about data quality, entry point. Yes, we're all seeking to be on the EdFi standards, but there are, I would say, major differences between some of the vendor systems and Aspire's capabilities at this point, right? I mean, ultimately, if we're going to get to Yes, yeah,
Are those the extras above data reliability?
yes.
So if we are at Ed5 standards, will we have reliable data, as understanding there's data entry problems sometimes?
The standards, so you can publish and put out all of the standards that you want. You can make them uniform, you can do that. However, if the system doesn't support the capability of at the entry point to do that, everybody's uniform and putting it in the same format as what is required, then we're going to continue to see these anomalies. We're going to see these differences. We're going to see these types of things too. And this is what the purpose of another purpose of the advisory council is to say, because a lot of people just say, well, make everybody do the same standard, right? Put them on the same standard. Great. But if you build a system, now see, this is the military thing, so this is not violent or anything, but if you build a system that's supposed to shoot 30 rounds and then you try to jam a 50-round clip into it, it's not going to work, right? So that's the best I can do for
So the first option is probably not a really great option for the committee, because we've got to be able to do more than what we currently are doing.
Yes, sir. Yeah, well, but not only more, sir, we're so far behind on all of the requirements that are out there that have been legislative and or rural requirements. And then we need systems that, because where the decision has been made that we're not going to put everybody into one system, even though we will talk about that in the HB 508 advisory committee, where that decision has been made, hey, look, you need to let them still choose. You need to let them do, which is why we're talking about Aspire, right? That that's the whole point of here is that how do we get to, getting the systems all capable of user friendliness, of we set Ed5 standards, but then how do we get them to ensure that the systems are capable? The entry point, there's going to be training, it's not just about when I just put something in, I meet the standard, right? You have to train people, you have to do those types of things too, which now I'm starting to make the argument for one system, but anyway. Yeah.
Or at least a limited number, or at least a very small,
yeah,
not a free-for-all necessarily.
Okay, so now we have two choices.
So number 2 is cease operations of the Aspire system completely by July 1st and report to the Legislative Public Education Appropriations Committee that the intent to do so, and request the use of 10 million one-time funds to assist LEAs currently using Aspire to transition to vendor. Or determine the cost of getting Aspire to appropriate levels, which we've done here, to interface and interoperate with USIMS and report those costs to the Legislative Public Education Appropriations Committee for use of the 10 million one-time funds for LEA SIS upgrades.
Another question.
And in addition to that, we would say minus this $1 million, 1.7 million, then the rest would be for the others that are coming up to standards with the vendors.
We do need some ongoing costs though in there too, and the 10 million is one time.
Yeah, that's the challenge. Now, that's
The
part of
challenge
it.
with this whole entire thing is we needed 35 million and we got 10, and it was all one time, and we need ongoing to maintain it.
Correct, but that's part of the
Yeah.
process related to 508 is to make recommendations to the legislature on not only, depending on what direction the board wants to do as representation of the system that you provide, right, is to ultimately get to the point where, well, how is it best to maximize the 10 million we have in one-time money for everyone? It's really designed for LEAs. Well, LEAs are using Aspire, right? And so if you continue to use Aspire or provide that, then
Portion of that would need
a portion would need to go that to the one-time money. But then we will also need to have these representatives speak for the LEAs that are choosing their own systems, which is what we're under now, that guidance or direction. Let them choose their own system to help them with that one-time money as well, but then also look to making requests of the legislature for ongoing funds, to sustain it. Because we're getting into this whole aspect of, well, should systems be state driven, and should they be funded with state money, or should they be, that's all Yeah, I really do
Regardless,
see
it's
this
taxpayer
as
dollars,
flesh out.
right?
Yeah,
It's
right.
just which avenue it comes.
And how do
want it to
you-
come through the state or want it
Yes,
to come
right.
through local. Chris, Member Vargas had a question.
Well, I'm wondering how many of our data problems are caused by Aspire?
Very, actually, if you compare it to other vendors, very few. I mean, to the other vendors' credit, they have a lot more LEAs, a lot more students, and they have to take care of multiple states. And so getting, changes made is a little bit harder for them. We're more agile here, but we do still have some issues that we need to fix, which is.
But our data, I apologize, I should really finish. Our data issues are not coming out of Aspire's limitations, if you will. It's coming out of vendors who aren't necessarily doing what we need them to do.
I won't say it's not just other vendors. We have, like, for example, we have in what that one-time cost, enhance the Aspire attendance module to improve ability to help schools effectively track and manage student attendance data. So there are things that we can do better in Aspire to get it, so for the data quality piece.
Yeah, so what we're talking about here is that to answer the question, there's different strengths of Aspire as far as data reliability and accuracy, but there's weaknesses too.
Yeah.
And so if we compare, Aspire to that to get to what Right is, as far as a strong system that meets all of the data requirements for reliability and accuracy, these are the investments that need to be made for that. There are vendor systems that are stronger in that aspect that he just mentioned than others. So when we do the, 3 times a year, when they're certifying their student counts or those two things, there are differences that we can tell between different systems, but no system is perfect or even close to perfect. But then no system is really completely inadequate, right? I mean, the LEAs choose a lot of times the system that best supports interoperability for what they have also chosen, for other systems like that, which is fine. That's great. We don't do it, but there's going to need to be more investment in every system regardless, right? But if we don't do Aspire, that basically sends the message to these users right now that they need to go find one, and then how do they pay for that? And those aspects too. So hopefully that answered. Well, can I check with Board Member Bogus? Did I answer that question, ma'am?
Yeah, you did, and I appreciate that because I think it helps us draw a conclusion as to where we need to go here. Do we have any inclination that we're ever going to get the money we need from the legislature?
I can address that. I do feel that there is an indication just by virtue or by the fact that Representative McPherson did build 508 for this study as an indicator that there's that potential for that. But we're really going to have to dot the I's and cross the T's. We're really going to do that. And I really felt that it was a strong indication that there is interest in getting the systems to the LEAs that support what is required by law, by virtue of the fact that they did fund 10 million of one-time money. So I do believe there's a lot of potential that they would listen and provide ongoing money, because I think there's a good agreement, and I'm not blaming anybody, not saying anything. When we require things from our LEAs, we should actually resource them to do it. And I just don't feel like they have the resources in their systems. Some do, but it's usually because of economies of scale, right? So if you're going to open up, more charter schools and you're going to do that, then we need to resource them, and we should. And so yes, I do think that because there's going to be even more reliability. We're talking about early warning systems. We're talking about all these different systems that are going to need to be sufficient to meet the standards for data input that ultimately leads to decision making by you as policymakers and by the legislature. So sorry, long answer. But
It
yes,
just makes sense that PEA would want to deep dive in all the details. I mean, it's a big ticket item, and it does make sense. Chair Hymas?
Well, you answered my question for the most part, and what I'm what I'm hearing then is that getting rid of Aspire is not going to fix the problem.
No, because then they have to go find other systems.
Well, I'm saying,
No, yeah.
even if they go out and find other systems, you're saying not all the systems are doing what we need them to do anyway.
Right, which is what we're going to further rectify, study, and do as part of the 508.
You're hoping to get the money to, I mean, the ideal situation is to build an SIS statewide and mandate it throughout the state. I mean, would that be best case scenario?
Well, so now we're
I'm saying you personally, Scott, I was thinking.
Yeah, it's what we're trying to do is to ensure that there's input provided for the 900 and plus users of Aspire along the lines of, well, I can't afford to go into another system, or, you know, you have to help me sustain this system, or do these, you know, those are the types of things that we need to do, and that needs to come through the board for the decision making, not one SIS, but SISs that are all to the same level to support LEA data reliability and accuracy. That's what we're seeking. So did I answer your question?
We're seeing this as two different things, though. One is Aspire is not doing the job, and the other ones aren't necessarily doing the job either. So we're talking about messing with Aspire. Even if we boost it and get it to where it needs to be, we still have a majority of the LEAs not compliant anyway. You know what I mean? So it's like all we're doing is flipping, saying, okay, now we have somebody who is, but what do we do for these others? So that's.
You have 7, you have 8, and $8.3 million left to help them get to that point.
To help
From the
with the
10,
vendor?
the LEAs, with their vendors.
With
get to
their
that point.
choice.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If the vendor, and I get this is public and unpopular, but if the vendor doesn't step up, that's what I'm saying. If the legislature is telling us to do it and the vendor's not responding to get there, maybe they are. I don't know what's happening in the background, but
In fairness, the vendors aren't turning a blind eye to this. I mean, we have met with vendors and from what I understand has spent a lot of their own time ratcheting up, but that doesn't still answer the overarching question of what do we do moving forward.
that's what I'm saying. I guess I'm trying to get down to the motion here that, like, you know, we put 10 million into assisting the LEAs to transfer off of Aspire, and we're still in a similar situation. Now we're just working with vendors, or we put the 10 million towards updating Aspire, and we still have 80% of our population not there. Now we just have, if we update Aspire, we have, I'm sorry, what was the percentage of students?
12%.
12%, so 88% are the chair are not there, right? Anyway, so I feel like we're just.
Yeah, that's right. So Madam Chair, I don't know really how to answer that.
Well, there's no question in there. It's just
right. Well, no, it's a valid concern. Yeah. But that's the thing. That's why I really think and you know, Royce, I'm about to phone a friend here. You need to help me with these charter schools, man.
I'm about
you know,
to.
So
You know what these two are thinking over here.
yeah, you know, it's just that. Look, we're going to have differences of opinion. There's going to be people that say, get rid of Aspire, it interferes with market competition. You're going to have people that are going to say, no, keep Aspire because you know, we don't have the economies of scale to invest in what, you know, is required of the system. Help us, state. That's what has to. There's no way of getting around this. We have to make a decision at some point. Now, whether that's here, you know, whatever you recommend, you know, inevitably, when we get deeper into the 508 process, we are going to have to land someplace with Aspire, you know, future or doing that. I mean, I just don't see how there's any way of getting around that. And then if we do keep it and we do need to get it up to standard, that's where we have to generate out how much ongoing money we would need and do another too, because part of the challenge is that if you provide a system that's doing it, we've seen a couple of charter schools come to us well, 2 or 3 just recently came to us and did away with their system. So do we create?
On a system outside of Aspire.
Right, and now they came, so lately we've seen actually a gain, I think, in LEAs. Where before it was, so, you know, when you create something, it could become somewhat of a field of dreams, and if you build it, they will come, but then if you build it, but you charge them to come, then they may not, you know, I mean, if you charge a ticket to see the cornfield and the, you know, play baseball with, you know, all those old players, then, I mean, these are policy decisions, they're not our. I know.
That's not what I thought you said. That's not what you said. And I was keeping it straight. So I tell my husband all the time, I love that Christina sits on my side of the boardroom because she has this fun energy that always, like, just when you think you're like ready to put your hand out.
It's just my example.
That's great.
So again, Royce Van Tassel for the millions listening online, Utah Association of Public Charter Schools. Right. No, this is we've been through a similar process when we went through the FIS systems and saying we need to, we have data problems. And USIMS, I think, alleviates a lot of that. And we said we need some minimum modules. As Board Member Bogus noted, APIs can be part of it, but we have some minimum issues that have to be addressed already. I've been wondering, I hear you guys wondering the same thing. You've got $10 million, you're talking about roughly 1.2 million that says if we spend this 1.2, then we think that Aspire is at a stable level. But the longer term question, and this is always, it's easy to spend well, I shouldn't say that. One-time money is useful to get you to a point, but can you maintain it? And the answer is no by itself. You have to have some ongoing. And one of the challenges, this isn't news certainly to anyone on this team, but one of the challenges that you inevitably face is market competition, price for the talent that you want to keep that. That's just a reality. It's inherent in that question about can we keep it where it is? Obviously, smaller LEAs, most of which are charter schools, are going to be more price sensitive for all of the reasons that you've talked about. And so we would prefer to get a free or less expensive option. There are a few charter schools that say, yep, we want the $12 or $15 a student piece. But the constellate, you know, if we say that now this is going to become $5 or $10 a student, you will inevitably see some charter schools change sort of the constellation of services that we provide. That's just it's a basic budget question. So our preference, obviously, not really a surprise, would be to continue status quo with the state giving you more money to provide that cool upgraded Aspire system.
Build the dreams.
And that's right. That's exactly right.
Don't go there, Royce.
If only for Board Member Bogus's sake. But I am keenly aware of what the upcoming budget scenarios look like, and the likelihood that there is new ongoing money in the next couple of years. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in that. And given a choice between some dedicated money here for another 0.5% on the value of the WVU, my answer is going to be really clear there. want to continue to be part of that conversation. I'm giving you some very high level. I'm sure if you talk to the folks that are part of my friends from charter schools that are part of the Aspire user group, they can give you much more detailed answers than I am. But I suspect they're all going to mesh to that basic point.
Thank you. Todd Harper, can we hear from you?
Sure. Todd Harper, Business Administrator, Grant School District. Probably just a few considerations. I don't have an answer to this conundrum either. I think one challenge is, what is the long-term vision? Can we establish what the long-term vision is? Because some of the noise and pushback is actually around change. We have a change cost to go from whatever system we're in to the next one. And some of us have just changed recently, so we are like very hypersensitive to that, and others haven't done it in a long time. So that's, you got to weigh that out. The long-term vision against it's going to take effort to get there. Another for many districts is customization. There are reasons why there are different systems out there, and how deep we buy into the modules all have to do with what we want out of the system. And some districts are willing to put more money into it to get better or different information than just a standard offering. So that's an issue. How do we manage customizing? Another consideration, this will be the last, is there are errors in the data, and some of them are systems based. The software doesn't do something right, or the data fields aren't available. And another bigger component, in my estimation, is actually the data entry itself. So it doesn't really matter, in my estimation, at the end of the day, what system you're going to choose, whether it's a state one or I keep my own. I'm going to have data error based on data entry. And that's not going to go away. If you go to a single system or not, that element will exist and persist. We have new people all the time. We have to train them all the time. It's just a fact of life. So again, if we can sift out what are the errors we think we will get rid of by going to a single system or not, cool, but just know that that's not the panacea. That will not take care of all the challenges.
Understood. Members, I'm seeking a motion. Thank you both for your input, all of you.
Before you seek one, I'm after hearing things, I'm leaning towards 3, quite frankly, and I don't like putting more money into this. I really don't. I do think that there's a responsibility, but if we can do this right and get the funding behind it, then I think it could be beneficial to our schools, not only those who are currently using Aspire, but maybe those in the future. I think in the future, if we did get Aspire where we wanted it, we could charge, if necessary, to cover basic costs. It'd still be more expensive, or if it does fail, we could still cut it out. So Scott, will you? Okay. So I just agree with that, Madam Chair.
Is that a motion on the floor? Do you want me to read number 3?
I'm putting it out there because if there's pushback or differences, but that's where I'm leaning.
I feel if I were living in a perfect world, that is the direction I would go. I would want us to come up with a system that is reliable, that does everything it's supposed to do. It's close to home. We can fix it if it's broke. We can somehow attract more and more of our student population to this system as we get a better system. My only concern is our recent track record or not of successfully acquiring or having funds made available to do the things that we need to do in a bazillion areas. And with the challenges that face the legislature to be fiscally responsible and to do everything that's got to be done in the entire state, there's no question that we're going to have to jump through some pretty magnificent hoops to be able to do what we're suggesting we want to do, not just on one-time funds, but to do it with ongoing support so that this does do for our various LEAs what it needs to do. So, I mean, if we could just be positive and say, okay, we're going to jump through those magnificent hoops and we're going to do what needs to be done. So we have the reliability, we have the system that works for our LEAs and for our needs at the state level. And I too would be supportive of number 3.
So I tend to agree with Member Hymas here. I am concerned though that when push comes to shove, these Ed5 standards are going to change and we will not be able to keep pace with the free market.
Might be true. That's
We just will never.
Certainly a risk.
I think that more often than not, when government tries to produce a system that the free market produces, it lags behind, and not just a little bit. And when you think about the way policies play out in the system, big companies push for policy changes, and then those policy changes in turn interact with the free market systems, and then their market share increases. And when that happens and it comes unfunded, we will lag behind, and then we will have spent all this money while our LEAs all jump ship.
That's been a concern of mine too, but balanced on the flip side of that concern with as rapidly as our state code changes, we are in the best position to change rapidly with our state code, as we've seen with Aspire versus vendors. So which is gonna change, it's like, you know,
We're in the best place if we're funded. If we're not funded,
by the state, it's gonna have to come in per pupil cost. That's gonna be the bottom line.
I'm not saying I disagree with you. I'm saying I think that in some ways it could, I know I'm gonna offend people, it could be a pipe dream.
Well,
I'm very concerned about that.
It's all a gamble, right?
Yeah.
But that's the risk if we went with 3 and we learn some things, then we're gonna be sitting here when that comes up, what we've learned, and we're gonna have the same 3 motions on the board, right? Continue, cut ties, or improve.
I mean, the only thing number 3 does, we've already done the first part of 3. We've already established the costs. So the only thing number 3 does is to tell PEA, here are the costs. And
Well, to tell the advisory committee to tell.
yes,
Yes, I mean, because it's an integral part.
we're giving this to the advisory committee. Ultimately, this is gonna come back to us
Right.
anyway, right?
As the board, yes.
Yeah,
I
so,
mean, that's the complication of this, ma'am, is you're the Aspire holder, but then you're also the one that's supposed to report back.
yeah, so basically the number 3 motion is to take all the information we've just been given here and to pass it on to the advisory committee to consider, along with the vendors, the costs, one vendor or one state SIS, multiple vendors. Our board currently has voted for multiple vendors. We would have to go back and change board rule or our board vote if we were gonna do something different. But I'm hearing that you want to vote that this, I'm assuming the working group is going to consider all of the options. And we are
Yes.
asking them to consider the costs and benefits and ROI and whatnot, and not of,
Yeah, if I may, ma'am,
Aspire.
I mean, just that's the whole thing, right? The committee has to consider all SISs.
right,
They have to, all the different input on what LEAs currently can do and not do with their chosen systems, right? I mean, that's why I say it is what it is. Aspire is here. It's existed for years, and
Yeah.
it's just one piece of the process of getting to reporting to PEA as directed by 508.
so in addition to Chair Hymas's almost motion of, or potential motion of, having this financial information given to the advisory group to be considered, to be also presented to PEA, do we need to include in the motion something like, in addition to, the advisory group studying implications and costs of open-ended vendors, limiting vendors, differences in final products, or is that all just already understood in the code?
What do you think, Jared? Chair, yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure. Yeah. I think that might get fleshed out as part of it.
Is there language in the code that says it's going to? We need to move on, but
Yes, yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's that specific as you put it, but I do believe that.
that's the intent.
Yeah, that's the.
So we don't need that. We just need, if we want Inspire included, we just need to say, please include Inspire in the conversation.
Yes.
You ready?
I mean, because there's no point, there's no point in, if the board's direction was to get rid of Aspire, right, then there would be no point in talking about that.
Right.
As part of the, yeah, I hope that helps.
That does help.
Is this it? Does this look different than 3?
This is the part of, yeah, we've already done the first part up there, so that's why the blue is highlighted. It's just taking what we've already done, the information we've gathered, and sending it to the advisory committee for
I'm
consideration.
going to read this. That's on the screen. You have
Don't read the first part, because we've already done it. It's the blue part in blue. Well, now she that
That's what I'm saying.
one is playing with me. Yeah, me.
Highlight what you would like me to read.
So I created that. If that doesn't say what you want it to say, then let me know. But I just added to report it to the 508 for recommendations to Public Education Committee, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just think it needs to be changed.
So Cami, I think taking out the determine the cost and needs to be pulled out up through USIMS. I can't see that part, sorry.
But maybe you maybe just interpose it. You just put
The cost of getting expired to appropriate levels, interface and interoperate with USIMS
yes,
to the 508 advisory
Exactly.
councils develop.
exactly.
Great.
So you're just putting that first line into the second after the report. What is it that we're reporting? We're reporting that first line because we've already.
I hear you. I want to read a motion. I don't want to break it up. I don't want to chop it up.
Amazing, and she's
Okay.
doing it.
Because I have one on my screen that I could.
Let's hear.
Okay. Yeah, let me scoot forward. Okay. I move that the committee recommends the board direct staff to report the costs of getting Aspire to appropriate levels to interface and interoperate with USIMS to the 508 Advisory Council to develop recommendations for the Legislative Public Education Appropriations Committee for use of the 10 million one-time funds for LEA SIS upgrades.
Maybe there's a motion on the floor that the committee recommends that the board direct staff to report the cost of getting Aspire to appropriate levels to interface and interoperate with USIMS to the 508 Advisory Council to develop recommendations for the Legislative Public Education Appropriations Committee for BOCAF. We add some use, because it's only 1.7, some use of the 10 million one-time funds for LEA SIS upgrades.
Sure.
Okay, those in favor, please vote.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Let's go to funding requests for budget recommendations in accordance with the Budgetary Procedures Act, please.
So this is the, so we started the process. I advised the board on the process as part of the study session last month, as you recall. So this agenda item is for any additional requests that any finance committee members might want to make as far as funding for when we get to the submission of the proposed budget to the governor in October and then the legislative session in 2026. So if you recall last finance committee meeting, we had this same agenda item and there were some motions made or, the board direct staff to start the process of preparing documentation of requests for funding. And the board ratified those yesterday. So this is just an opportunity, one more time here in finance, can we do it? Because starting in August, it'll just be in front of the whole board as we move towards October and then ultimately the 26th legislative session. So hope that helps.
It does help. I have one. Members, the other members speak first if they brought one. Did you bring one? Did you bring a funding request? Okay, I'll move forward.
I do have some clarification on BTS that I'd like to talk about.
Okay, you want to do that first?
I can.
Okay, go ahead.
So I think that in presenting Beverly Taylor Sorensen, there is a misunderstanding, a gross misunderstanding on the part of the legislature and on the part of most people in the state of Utah in terms of what BTS is doing. I think it's important that in even our funding proposals that we refer to the Beverly Taylor Sorensen Arts Learning Program as an integrated arts learning program. That the integration with core subjects, core academic subjects, math, science, social studies, whatever all of those subject areas are, this is not an arts program. If we were doing an arts program, we would be approaching this in a completely different way. And I'm speaking from 43 years as a university professor in arts education and preparing our teachers to have those arts experiences in our schools pre-K through 12. It's critical that we help them understand that we have chosen in Utah the most innovative arts approach of any state in the union. And that is that we are supporting the learning process in multiple content areas, depending on the actual teachers that we have available in various locations and LEAs and charters across the state. We are using the arts experience to strengthen and shore up academic learning, the mastery of skills, the mastery of a body of knowledge that is not related to the arts, but that is related to the core. So academic excellence in all of our core areas is tied to this arts experience that is integrated into social studies or into science or into English or into mathematics to help the students achieve higher levels. And we have data we would love to share, but almost never do we get to the point where people will really stop and listen to what we're doing. But it's okay. We don't have to have them completely understand what's, just like they don't have to understand how to teach chemistry or calculus. They just need to know that we've got professionals that are doing this and the purpose for doing it, rather than let's just do some music, let's just do some art, let's just do some drama, let's do some dance, let's do some media arts. Those things are in support of the academic mission of our program. That's why we sing its praises. That's why we are working so hard to not only maintain, but to be able to include more children, because the fact is that we have been successful. And if they want to look at the successes, they're there, they're available. The data is rich and readily available, and we'd be happy to make it more available, but they're not interested because they're just in their minds thinking, oh, this is the arts. That's just kind of fluff. It's extra stuff. This is not extra. This is key and central to our mission for academic excellence in our core content areas. And if we were just doing an arts program, we would do it in a completely different way. So how we communicate that, I'm not quite sure.
Well, thank you. I thank you, Member Booth, and I think that Chair Hymas has his PEA presenter I think you have your passion because you're preaching the choir. I always say,
Well, I
we're
talked to
teaching
PTA
state board
before,
standards through
And
the
I
arts.
don't think, I didn't do a good job. So I don't know what
I'll go with you next time.
because they still didn't do what they were gonna do. So we gotta figure out.
You did a great job. I thought you did a great job. And you communicated that we're teaching state core standards through the arts. This is a way to achieve academic excellence. It's just me staying on message, staying on the
But
message.
right after that, then the leaders of PEA said, we don't want to hear about it, and it's, we don't want to fund this. So
Well,
I don't know what the
Matt
approach
was
is. So
very
any ideas you
supportive.
get, Matt, I know Matt doesn't want to fund it. But it's core, and I'll keep fighting.
Well, and I think
I'll
it's,
be with it.
the core, NCLB named the arts core subjects, and I don't believe they were taken out in ESSA. I could be wrong, but the fact is the arts are inherently, they're 365-degree subjects. You can't teach any art form without discussing setting, plot. So there's ELA, there's social studies, there's time, place, historical factors that all integrate. When you talk about genre, you're integrating your ELA factions. When you talk about phrases, you're talking about the completion of a sentence, the beginning, the middle, the end. It is the quintessential piece that brings all other subject areas that are otherwise unrelated together.
Amen.
And so even if it did stand alone,
You got a good duo here.
it's still the best way to advance learning. And if you look at the SAT scores and the ACT scores that are of the highest, it is overwhelming how many of those kids were involved in arts programs. It's like 80 or 90%. They were involved in advanced level arts programs in their high schools, and they're scoring above the rest of our students who were not involved in arts programs. And it's because they got a better education because of it. And so I think we need to, I understand the integrated piece, I get it, I'm cheering you on, but even if it were arts for art's sake, it still should be funded.
It should.
I agree.
So, Chair,
Yes,
process
word
wise, so we have conditions set that where we can honor what board member Booth has presented today, and here's how that would go. Yesterday, the board approved your recommendation from last month to build a request for funding for Beverly Taylor Sorensen funding.
So you put some of the key points in the.
Well, so this is my opportunity to just, and always respectfully ask that when we do present those, so we're gonna work on those over July, the ones that were, directed by the board for us to put together so that they're in the backups to the agenda item in front of the full board that starts, like I mentioned earlier, in August. The key piece is that typically we take those requests for funding, and that is what ultimately results in the slide presentation or the slides that we present to PEA. So, sir, through the chair, if you'll look at that, staff do a good job of preparing things, but the juice is worth the squeeze if the board spends a little more time on, saying, hey, directing the staff to add this or change this. Now, I don't know if you need to do that in full board.
The data
right, but
you're talking about would be
yes.
helpful to put in that slide. I've seen, we've done that with
Yes,
like
ma'am.
and other things. The data is quite salient. So.
That would be my recommendation is staff to do this. Well, and I'm not saying that. I'm not. Sir. But the process, if we trust the process and we do it, that's the opportunity to do it.
Okay,
That time
thank
to
you
do
so
it.
much.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate that. And it sounds like you'll get with them over the summer to help out some of those pieces.
I'm happy to do it. I get it in my inbox. I can just forward it along.
Yeah, sounds great. I would like to move that the committee direct staff to prepare a funding request for the continuation of the master pilot program. This is the program that came out of this office where we had kind of looked nationally at different models and things and talked with a lot of educators about the piece that was missing when teachers wanted to have some leadership and mentoring opportunities, but wanted to stay in the classroom. And there have never been the funding mechanisms available, but for this tiny little ridiculous stipend that used to be in place. So this is funding some opportunities for our teachers to really reinvent themselves. And anyway, it shows that programs of this nature nationally have greater retention rates for teachers because it is invigorating as well, and it helps our new teachers that are coming on board. And do you have anything to add about that? Julie's been a large part of this. But maybe if members have questions about it, she can answer too, or if you have a kickoff statement, and then we'll let members ask questions.
Julie Lundell, I'm the specialist over, I have a new job title today, but it's school leadership and school improvement. So, and this program, we're 1 year in, it was a 2-year pilot program. And so we're still just collecting data on impact. So what we have right now is mostly anecdotal data, but we have 30 LEAs that were able to get funded last year. 20 were charters and 10 were districts. And overwhelmingly, they love it. They love the impact that it is having on their teachers, for retention, for morale, providing leadership tracks for teachers that have not had that before outside of administration. And it's been really, really impactful. And we had a little bit of extra money and we were able to offer it again this next year. So all 30 that did it the first year automatically are in the second year. But we opened it up again and said, if there's anyone else, we have 1 more year left of money, and we had 19 more LEAs apply. And of those, we'll probably be able to fund about half of them. So we won't be able to fund all that are interested. So just the level of impact and excitement around it, I definitely think it's worth growing and expanding, and we're going to be working on getting the hard data back on the impact it's having on retention.
Great, thank you. Any questions?
What kind of money are we asking for?
What was our total last time?
The initial allocation on the pilot was, I believe, 4.8 million, or at least in that ballpark. Yeah. So it would be a determination on if, knowing the ongoing money is a little bit hard to come by, do we want to just try to continue the pilot? Do you want to ask for more money? Those are some questions you could consider. But the initial 2-year for what we've been able to do to this point was 4.8 million.
One time?
Yes, one-time funding.
So even if they meet that, we'll be able to serve less because of our inflationary costs, other things. So we'll be serving fewer, even if they just repeat one-time funding at 4.8.
That's a possibility. Most of these are running via stipends to the teachers for their additional time and effort, or in some cases, perhaps paying for one class period that they're not teaching, and that during that class period, they're going out and mentoring or doing some different activities. So it's kind of a mix of stipends or partial salaries. And yes, that can change a lot as, hourly wages change.
But we're thinking of status quo.
Yes.
I know they're about 4.8, right? Or
I think to at least maintain and continue the program and get data back in a long-term effort. I think that the board very much wanted to grow teacher leadership across the state and have that available. Whether we're at that window yet or not, I'm not sure, but I think definitely LEAs who are involved would love to see it continue, and there are more LEAs who would be interested in joining in.
So should we amend this motion so that we're looking at a dollar amount equal to or no greater than? Like, what are we actually asking our staff to do here? Because the continuation would imply growth, but I don't think if we start asking the legislature for that I think they're gonna laugh at us.
To increase it from the 4.8, you mean? I think we should stay the same until we get a little bit more data personally.
Yeah, so then should we to continue it at its present levels? Or what? And maybe that's implied, but to me that wasn't super clear.
I think that's, so that's my motion. So I can change that to the committee recommends that the board direct staff to prepare funding requests for the continuation of the master pilot program to continue at its present levels. Any conversation to the motion?
Sounds good.
Members, please, if those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you, Director Lindell. And then we'll move on to 3.9 Charter School Revolving Loan Promissory Note Amendment.
So I have a series of data requests, but I don't see it on the agenda.
Okay, so you may need to Are they time sensitive?
Yeah.
Can we do them in August or we need them this time?
We really do need them this time.
Can we do them if we didn't get them on, have that as an ongoing? Oh, actually, I actually think we can, can't we? Because there's a.
They're usually an agenda item. They just seem to have disappeared this month.
Cammy, it's Scott.
Over.
Now, so the data request agenda item, there was a reason why we took that off, right?
Yes, we were asked to take that off a couple of months ago, actually, and to have them go through the regular process for requesting data.
Which is the filling out of the form to go to leadership.
Correct.
For, yeah.
So
We
where
were
is that for?
directed. My understanding is you get access it through the board secretary.
I asked it for once, Leanne sent it to me once, I can forward it to you. If I can find it, haven't used it yet.
I've just never seen it. So it's interesting that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Well, I'll send that to you.
Sure.
I'll look for it at least till the next meeting. Okay, so we are now looking at the Charter School Revolving Loan Promissory Note Amendment, American Principals Academy, and we have Laura Wilson and Specialist Laura Wilson and Director Sam Urey.
I'll take this one, Chair Davis.
Okay.
So Sam Urey, School Finance Director, American Principals Academy, also referred to as Cedar Charter Holders, DVA, American Preparatory Academy. Cedar City has transferred their charter agreement to Utah Charter Academies for American Preparatory Academy starting July 1 of 2025. American Principals Academy has an existing charter school revolving loan. That promissory note provided by the board, signed by the board chair, does not have a transfer provision. And so we are recommending that promissory note simply be amended so that the new charter operator can assume that charter school revolving loan officially.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions?
No,
Go ahead, Member Booth.
I recommend that the board approve, that the committee recommends that the board approve the transfer of the charter school revolving loan and the amended promissory note.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor that the committee recommends that the board approve the transfer of the charter school revolving loan and the amended promissory note. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. 3.10, electronic devices in public school amendment. This is not about cell phones in schools, by the way. This is the sort of compliance policy alignment thing with one of our secondary providers, right?
Correct.
Go ahead, Director Newey, or Deputy Newey. Thank you.
Thanks. So this is coming to you as a result of the audit. You saw the open ed audit that occurred, and this is just with kind of third party educational providers that contract with an LEA to provide services. And in some cases, these providers provide electronic devices, and that is separate from what the LEA provides. And so we're just adding some language into the policy or the required electronic device policy that LEAs have to develop that address these devices that are provided by the ESP, the educational service provider. So if you scroll down, there are two changes. One is that the policy should state that those who use these devices, even though they're not provided by the LEA, should not use them for inappropriate things. It's pretty straightforward. And then the second part is that when that ESP contracts with a family, that the LEA needs to have a retention policy for that contract. They don't have any party to that contract, but that they need to have a retention policy that holds on to that contract or any waivers that they have families sign signing up for the program. So those are the only two changes that are being made to this rule today.
When you say retention, is that going to make the LEA on the hooks, for example, if the family doesn't pay the bill if they switch to UFA? I mean, just hypothetically speaking.
No, that contract is still between the family and the ESP, but at least the LEA has a copy of it. And
thank you. Members, any questions?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I move that the committee approves R277-495 electronic devices in public schools draft 1 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor. The committee approves R 277-495 electronic devices in public schools draft 1 on first reading. And forward to the board for approval on second and final reading. And a question from member Bogus.
Thought I had waited until we're finished. It's okay. Under what circumstances should or would a third party provide electronic devices for kids?
So that's if they have a contract with an LEA. So this isn't very, I mean, Scott would know better how many of our LEAs, but it's a very small amount. And they provide, it's essentially students who want to homeschool but need a program with which to go through. So NEVO, for example, provides this ESP through OpenEd, and a family who wants to homeschool but doesn't have the curriculum or wants to use this particular method would sign up. The ESP gets money from the district, but they provide a computer so that the student can access all of the curriculum throughout the year on that computer. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. So, and yeah, so my question though would be, is this going to be abused wherein these big tech companies can come and bypass and just start handing out things, and then they collect data on our kids through the public school process, and it doesn't cost the public school a dime, and the monetary exchange, if you will, is the data.
So there's a couple of things I would need to think about this, but a couple of things that I will note is the first that there has to be a contract with the LEA. So the LEA is really in the driver's seat, and then the LEA actually provides some of their WPU to the ESP.
Yeah.
And so there is money being exchanged, and they are getting public school dollars. There is also several other rules that define how and when a third party provider can give something to a student, including these devices. And there's kind of some strict laws around that, right? Because we don't want it to look like bribery or something to make them want to sign up, right? Because they're getting a device, things like that. So we do have other laws that touch on that, but I can look further into it and let you know.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
And this one doesn't allow for that because it's already been done for decades. This one just makes it, I think, follow acceptable use. So you have to sign the acceptable use forms.
All that still in place.
Okay, that's from what I'm understanding. Any others? Okay, members, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes unanimously. R 277-400, thank you, Deputy Noe. School Facility Emergency and Safety Amendment. So we have Director Connell and Larson and Code. Okay,
Madam
so
Chair.
give us a bit of background.
Greg Cannell, policy analyst for the board. This is also in response to recent legislative updates in HB 40. And so we went through our kind of school safety and security rule to update some of the new language and definitions, and then added a few things as well. So you'll notice our first is updating the title to include safety and security. And then in our definitions in line 21 and 25, these were definitions put in by 53G 8102. And we had a few more down towards the bottom as well that we added in to meet the state code as well with our definitions. In line 35, we added in an additional purpose to the emergency preparedness plan, which is to safeguard students, staff, and patrons during and after an emergency or disaster. And this kind of opened it up and broadened it to include the after part as well of the emergency. We added in number 10, emergency response plan, natural disasters, technological or school security emergencies, striking violence. And the school security emergencies would cover the violent emergencies as well as maybe an intruder or a rabid animal or something like that that might also fall into that area. Line 44, we also updated that definition to meet the HB 40 changes in code. And then down in line 55, added the school safety and security director to mean the point of contact to fall in line with, again, with the 53G 8701 changes. 20, 20 and 23 are also changes to come in line, and we updated 23 to come in line with our rules, specifically R277-100. In the next section, 400-3, we updated line 82 to make sure that if there's any new staff that came into the school partway through the year and missed the beginning year orientations, that they would also be made aware of any emergency preparedness plans at that time of their orientation. And then added a few people down in lines 89 to 91 to the committee for school and community representatives, to include safety directors, school safety and security specialists, and school nurses. And those throughout the rule that we updated a lot to say school safety and security specialist, because that's the title now of that position. Our next changes to make note of are down in section 400-6. We updated to establish the state security chief as required in HB 40 as the one setting the standard response protocols, and then 155 and 156 to include those response protocols as well as the reunification method as well. The next changes are in section 400-8, line 184. This was again to update the language and the title for the school safety and security specialist, and then included any other individuals needed, and then listed a few of those specific individuals that might be useful to the multidisciplinary team, such as the school safety and security director, counselors, psychologists, social workers, and then members of the general and special education, as well as other community members. Eliminates that update to the name to add and security. And then down below in lines 202 to 205, we had some changes. We had some of the language stricken, and then made it more clear of overseeing school safety and security practices to ensure a safe and secure school environment for students and staff. And then our last changes in this rule that are substantive other than numbered would be in lines 217 to 224, and that's to outline the school safety and security training program that's required by code for us to make a rule. And we put in some of the people that would be required, and then added in that October 15th deadline to make sure that that program had taken place towards the beginning of the year.
Thank you. Questions of members?
Chair, I just want to mention that as I read this, I'm just kind of amazed, and I take my hat off to staff, to Greg, and as we've gone through other changes throughout the meeting today, Elise, Scott, Cammie, all of the safety team. I think it is remarkable that we are so responsive, that here we are in the month of June, and we already have all of this change organized and ready for consideration. There was a lot that came out of that session, and just wanted to say thank you to the staff for spending whatever it takes in terms of time and effort to help us get everything updated and everything into compliance, so that the very best experience is having for our LEAs and our students. It's wonderful.
Yeah, Madam Chair, that's a reflection on Elise's leadership too, taking over the rules and their staff too. So Elise has done a really good job organizing.
It is awesome.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
I don't think she's in. Is she in here
No,
to
she
get
had
that
to
nice?
go.
Someone send her a recording.
She can watch.
Thank you to all of you. Yeah, Member Bogus?
I would just move that we delete lines 21 and 25.
Oh, okay. I keep trying to, I'm like, I'm not controlling this. I'm on this Zoom. Can we see lines 21 and 25?
Those two definitions.
Is that defined in code?
It is defined in code, but neither of those words are used in this document.
Plus 25?
Can we ask why they were added if they're not used? So
Added them in, so slight oversight of those definitions if they're not used, so.
Are they used anywhere in this document? No. Or in any incorporated documents?
I don't
I don't
believe
believe
so
there's
in
any
this.
incorporated documents in this document. Am I incorrect in that?
Okay. Was this from an old survey or something like that, or?
I can speak to it if you would like, Chair.
Okay.
So climate and culture are two definitions that came out in House Bill 40. And as Greg and I were working on this, we had talked about, where these are new definitions, where we want to add them in. And then to Greg's point, there really wasn't any language after. We were, with so many moving parts and thinking through, what would we need to add in for, to align, especially to like the emergency response plans and culture and climate and things of that nature. And then also another body is talking about some climate survey and some other things. And so that was the initial reason, just because they are new and bring some awareness, and thought they might play out more in this role. But it isn't anything that couldn't be removed.
So since they didn't, are these now not superfluous to the overall concept in the code, but for this particular rule? Are they superfluous to this particular rule now then? I mean, it's fine if we get rid of it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Oh, can you restate your motion? We have a motion on the floor that
We strike lines 21 and 25.
that the committee strike lines 21 and 25. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any those opposed? That passes unanimously. And then I'm seeking a recommended action.
Oh, good.
Go ahead, Chair Hymas.
I move something. Or get on my screen here. I move that the committee approves R277-400 school facility emergency and safety draft 1 as amended on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading.
As amended.
I put that in. Said
Oh, you did put it in? Oh, I was writing the amendment while you were talking. I apologize.
after draft 1. So draft 1 on top of this.
Okay, you are. Is it in there when I repeat it? Yes. There's a motion on the floor that the committee approves R277-400 school facility emergency and safety draft 1 as amended on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Thank you. Let's move to,
Madam Chair.
let me take a minute here just to ask Deputy Jones. We have 10 minutes left and we have 4 or more information items.
Thank you guys very much. We'll see you next week. You'll be next week, right?
Yeah.
Staff recommend at your direction that we move to item number 13 for the school land trust quarterly report, and that we move item number 14 to next month because I like making Sam and Dale come back to these meetings.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, and then what about 13-12?
So those, if we have time after the quarterly report, those are summaries.
Let's do a quarterly
Do
report.
that. So yeah, I like Katrina to stay here too.
Okay, we saw Paul plant in Kierman and
We appreciate you bringing them back month after month.
Yes, ma'am.
Just so you know, I told him to do that.
I'm here for them.
And Cammie's there to help us with our slides.
Right. Cammy, can you spin the slides up, please?
Sorry, which one is it? Is it this last one? The report on SLT, or which one is it?
Yeah, we went to, don't go.
USBE to June 2025 report on SLT.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cammie. Thank you. Hello, Plant. I'm the director of the School Children's Trust here at the State Board of Education. Here is our compliance specialist that you met earlier today. And I'm going to turn the time to her.
Perfect, thank you. Thanks for having me. I am just gonna do a brief overview on some of our updated compliance processes, as well as a summary of 2024 and 2025 findings for what we call the comprehensive review. And that's really a generalized look at the requirements for a, as you know, very robust program. Cammie, could we move to the next slide? Perfect, thank you. Just a quick reminder, kind of the foundation of School Land Trust Program is it's designed to empower local decision-making all the way from LEAs and through school community councils for parental involvement. And so our compliance process really follows the same theme. When we're doing a compliance monitoring analysis, we are looking at local responsibility and oversight while using a sample of schools to kind of gauge what that oversight is looking like within the local education agencies. We found that this really respects local autonomy. So we've got some really good feedback from local education agencies about their ability to be involved in that process, while simultaneously ensuring the integrity of the program, which I know is a focus for all of our programs here. The next slide, I have to do a very, very quick and brief shout out to Paula, my director, because one of the things that I've so appreciated not only about the USBE, but being a member of her team is she has the strength of finding the strengths in others. And one thing that she's really given us the autonomy is to own our roles. So when I joined about 3 years ago to become a compliance specialist, she said, here is the vision of the USBE. Here's, the strategic plan we have. Within that, how do you want to grow this corrective action and compliance process in order to make it really work? And one of the things we decided is we wanted not only the SLT compliance process to provide value to the USBE, but also to the LEAs. And so how are we going to make that happen? One thing I have to thank you all for on the board is I know it's a little bit of a work in progress, the R277114 compliance monitoring process, but it has, at least for our program, provided such a strong framework and really empowered us to make improvements in our processes. And so as you continue your work on whatever that ends up looking like, just know that we have really great experiences, and I'd love to talk to any of you more about what we've seen. The three main improvements that I've seen is the way we communicate with LEAs through the compliance process, the way that we document things like findings and other supporting documentation, and then the way we respond is much more clear and it's much more consistent for our program than we have in the past. And so I'm really appreciative of that framework. And we found that, again, under that theme of empowering, it's empowered LEAs to find, to use corrective action plans to improve more of their internal processes and oversight for this program. On the next slide, I'm kind of gonna just really skip over this one. The only thing I'll say is that as far as value for the USBE and our responsibilities as a team in the administration, compliance, and training for the program, we've been able to develop kind of a binary quantitative data analysis for compliance reviews that have allowed us to strengthen our own team's internal risk assessment, as well as provide that value to feedback to LEAs. And so there's just a couple of examples on this slide of things that this new process has done for us. And I'll show you an example of that in just a second. On the next slide, we've been able to standardize some of our review templates through the framework in R277114. So we have a standardized way to do review notes and the corrective action plan now, as well as a risk score. That's where that binary analysis or quantitative analysis comes in. The risk score allows us to take certain compliance categories within the program and the subcategories. So each requirement that makes up something like council formations or a plan for how they're going to use funds. And it allows us to, on a very individualized level, look at where there's a likeliness of non-compliance and then use that to help support the LEAs in making a turnaround and ensuring that they're brought into compliance. There's some links in these slides that you have access to if you want to look at those, or if you have any questions about them or feedback for improvement, please let me know, and I'd love to talk to you about that as well. But for sake of time, I'm not going to show them to you right now. The next thing I'll go through is really quick a summary of the 24-25 reviews that we just finished, and then give you some information about the reviews we announced for 25-26. And this is specific to the comprehensive review. We do several more focused reviews throughout the year, so this is the overall one. For the 24-25 reviewees, we looked at 22 different LEAs. 7 of those were districts, 15 were charters. And then you can see kind of the size of sample schools, and those are based on a predetermined sample size for however many schools are within the LEA. I do want to point out that this is an increased amount of reviewees we're looking at, and some of the standardization of the process has helped us do more of that. We're just a tiny team of 3 here, soon to be 4, thank goodness.
Okay.
But on Monday we'll have a 4th person, but we've been able to still look at more compliance than we were in the past, so that's exciting. The next slide shows what the review focus was on. I'm not going to go through these, but just so you can see the different categories that we look at for the program within this overall review. And then, so there were about 8 categories we looked at this year. And then the next slide is just a quick timeline of what the review looks like. The comprehensive review does take me about a year, so it starts in May and kind of concludes in May of the following year. So I've just announced the reviewees for the next cycle, but that's an indication of what that process looks like. And then the next slide for more information for you is this is that risk, the risk score we have for the last set of reviews, so 24-25. I do, just for the sake of being public, have the districts and charter names just listed as like District 1, District 2, District 3, so that you can look and just kind of see what the analysis looks like. If you want a copy of the actual names, I'm more than happy to provide those too as well. The one thing that I learned this year in the implementation of this new risk score is that I was taking districts and comparing them to districts and charters, comparing to charters, which is why you have apples to oranges up there, but was able to find a way for this next cycle to be able to compare LEA to LEA. So that will be an improvement in the process from what we have right now. The next slide is a quick overview of the main categories we found with the highest risk for this review, differentiated between districts and charters. So we have a couple of things that we're looking at more closely: rules of order and procedure, expenditure of funds, and council membership, and kind of similar charters being election procedures and council membership. In response, all of those schools are, or excuse me, those LEAs are on corrective action plans, consistent with our 277-114. And there's also a heightened focus from our team with our risk analysis of how we're going to be putting out training this year and supporting LEAs and making sure that they make those corrections. And the last one I have is just a summary of this year's reviews that were just announced. All the LEAs are aware if they are a part of it. This year there's, again, 22 LEAs, 7 districts, 15 charters. And then just a couple notes about some additional improvements we're going to be making based off of what we learned this year. And happy to answer any questions you have if you have them.
That was an amazing summary right there. And it's 12:31, but members, do you have questions? Just double checking. So you're choosing LEAs based on risk, based on the documentation you receive in, not a random, or every 8 years you get audited.
That one. So they are on a rotational basis, but an LEA can be moved within that rotation if there's a report of non-compliance that's severe enough.
Yeah. Do you do any coordinating with like our school fees monitors or our internal audit department and OWAG? I mean, I just wonder if one LEA could get hit by 5 audits in 1 year or 5 intensive monitoring sessions in 1 year.
That's not at this time. We do try to make other departments aware of the LEAs we're reviewing in case there's a reason that we shouldn't be hitting them at once. I have heard from a couple of LEAs that they tend to get hit by various ones throughout the year and they just can't control it because everyone has their own rotational cycle, but I have heard of that.
Thank you so much. I would like to request that next, so we're not meeting in July. August will be an online meeting. September we'll be back to our quarterly in-person meetings. We'll be back here in this room in September. I would like to request in August that Katrina goes first. Can we put you first on your agenda? And we'd love to have you come very first, and we'd love to have you then leave and do whatever you want for the next 3 hours. You're not stuck here the whole time. Thank you for your
Madam
patience.
Chair, can we do both Katrina and Rebecca
Yes,
for
we'll-
Utah grants?
We'll put Katrina and
That's a-
Rebecca
that's a great
first.
package there, so.
Excellent.
Okay.
I wondered, but I thought we were
Yeah.
rotating them every other time, so I wasn't sure.
Well, I'll get with you too, because just as a point of, see, there's summaries in there.
We will read the summaries for
Yeah,
this.
please
Yeah,
read the
members,
summaries.
please read the
Yeah.
summaries. Thanks, everybody. Ready, break. And please, I remember that it's a special opportunity for Superintendent Dixon in the boardroom, or is it basement west? It's in the overflow. of
Next to the
boardroom.
board.
So say goodbye. So you need a motion to adjourn? Do we need a yes, so moved. So moved. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.
Ask for a motion to adjourn and then they so moved on your own.
I said so moved on the motion to adjourn.
All right.
Did you?